Chapter 36. Yu Qianzhou looked around again, walked back with his hands behind his back and murmured, "Young man, follow me from now on. I promise you'll eat and drink well every day. Someone in my previous life said it well. What's the most expensive thing in this century? Talent. Damn it. Only today did I realize I have the potential to be a talent scout. What a pity." He wandered back to the market, saw the young cultivator's empty stall and couldn't help but smile. He continued to wander between the stalls. "Fellow Daoist, where can I buy a storage bag?" Yu Qianzhou finally met a cultivator that he could confirm was of a lower level than him and asked him. The cultivator smiled and said, "Storage bags are relatively high-grade items, you can't buy them from the stalls. You'll have to go to the surrounding stalls to find them." Yu Qianzhou looked around at the well-decorated stalls and cupped his hands in thanks. Passing through the square, he looked at the stalls one by one and found that the items here were clearly marked, but the prices were indeed not comparable to the stalls outside, and some were even scarily expensive. After walking through a few stalls, he didn't find any storage bags, and under the guidance of others he finally found a shop called Hidden Secrets Pavilion, and indeed found the storage bag he wanted to buy. The shopkeeper inside greeted enthusiastically, "Fellow Daoist, what would you like to buy?" Yu Qianzhou looked around and said, "I want to buy a storage bag." The shopkeeper laughed and said, "Fellow Daoist, you've come to the right place. Our sect's storage bags are famous in the cultivation world. They are durable and one can be used for 100 or 200 years without a problem. How big do you want? Our store has storage bags that can hold up to 3 rooms. What's the price?" "Forget it, just give me the cheapest one." Yu Qianzhou said he was just using it for show anyway. There was no need to waste money. No matter how rich he was, he wouldn't do what that prodigal did. The shopkeeper was slightly stunned. This was the first time he met someone who spoke so straightforwardly, and said with a slightly embarrassed smile, "The cheapest one is naturally the one with a room. It's 1 high-grade spirit stone." 1 high-grade spirit stone? So expensive. "Shopkeeper, you didn't lie to me, did you?" Yu Qianzhou exclaimed. The shopkeeper didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Fellow Daoist must be joking. This shop has been in business for hundreds of years and storage bags have always been sold at this price. If you don't believe me, you can go out and ask around." "Forget it. Since it's a time-honored brand, there's no need to ask. Give me one." After saying that, he took out a high-grade spirit stone. After receiving the storage bag, Yu Qianzhou still mumbled, "Such a small bag actually costs a high-grade spirit stone." After hanging the bag on his waist, he didn't even need to look to know that it was a cultivator. After leaving the Hidden Secret Pavilion, Yu Qianzhou continued to stroll around one shop after another. He discovered one thing, and that was that almost all of the famous sects in the cultivation world had a shop here. He wondered if there was a shop owned by Ong Guangtsung. After strolling around, he finally saw Ong Guangtsung's logo in front of a shop. He didn't know what Ong Guangtsung had for sale and what was on sale inside. He wanted to go in, but he was afraid of bumping into someone he knew. He shook his head, safety first. It was better not to go in. "Junior Marshal's sister. Come here quickly. Our Ong Guangtsung shop is here." Yu Qianzhou didn't walk far when he suddenly heard a familiar voice and he turned to look. Hey. The world was really small, there would be no meeting without enmity. It was really an old acquaintance, the direct grandson of Ong Guangtsung's sect leader, Lu Zhenguang. He didn't know who that junior martial sister was, but he felt that her back was somewhat familiar. After thinking for a while, he resisted the urge to go over and mock Lu Zhenguang. Although this was 100 Flower Palace's territory, and no one dared to fight, he couldn't beat him. Running over to show off his tongue wasn't something a hero would do. After thinking about it, it would be better to wait until he had the strength to beat someone up in the future. The mountains didn't change and the rivers flowed. There would always be a time when he met him and took care of him. After strolling around the stalls for a while, he bought a bunch of things that he didn't know if they were useful or not. In any case, after buying things that he was interested in, the sky gradually darkened, and he slowly walked back to 100 Flower House. When he walked to Guan Yu's room, he found that Guan Yu was still sleeping soundly on the bed. He couldn't help but sigh. This was the sorrow of refining Qi level 10. If you couldn't break through to the foundation building stage, then what was the point of cultivating? It was no different from eating and waiting for death. Yunchang, wake up. This boss will take you to eat and drink." Yu Qianzhou used his foot to wake Guan Yu up. The two went downstairs of 100 Flower House and ordered a bunch of food. Looking at the table full of food, Xianxia ordered whatever was good. He might be stingy with other things, but he would never treat himself unfairly when it came to food. Drinking big bowls of wine and eating big pieces of meat, it felt so good. The stalls outside were lit up, and even the stalls in the square had become a night market. The two ate and drank, enjoying the scenery outside. Junior Marshal sister, come quickly. This is the best inn in the 100 Flowers Valley 100 Flower House. Manager, give me 2 of the best rooms. He heard that familiar voice again. Xianxia turned his head to look. It was really a small world for enemies. It was that guy Lu Jingguang again, leaning on the counter to pick a room. Forget it, I'll just pretend I didn't see it. Just as Xianxia was about to look away, a young girl walked in the door and he couldn't look away. It was none other than the woman he was most familiar with in Ongquangsung, Chu Ping'e. As Chu Ping'e looked around and sized up 100 Flower House, she also saw that familiar face near the window. Chu Ping'e couldn't believe it. She thought to herself, am I seeing things? Isn't he dead? The two just looked at each other. Xianxia pouted and gestured at Lu Jingguang. He put a finger in front of his mouth and made a shushing gesture. Chu Ping'e's face immediately lit up, and her eyes showed unconcealable excitement. The other party's actions undoubtedly proved his identity. She looked at Lu Jingguang and knew what he was referring to. She nodded slightly. The two booked a room and were brought upstairs by the staff. On the way upstairs, Chu Ping'e couldn't help but look at him again. Xianxia smiled and pointed at himself, then upstairs, telling her that he was also staying upstairs. Chu Ping'e walked up with light steps. Seeing that Lu Jingguang had also gone upstairs, Xianxia felt a chill run down his spine. He actually dared to get a room with his chick. He must be tired of living. Then he remembered that Lu Jingguang had booked 2 rooms and he felt a little better. However, he still couldn't swallow his anger. Guan Yu used his chopsticks to knock on Xianxia's chopsticks. He smiled and said, "Boss, she's already upstairs. Are you still in a daze? Why, have you fallen for her?" Xianxia rolled his eyes at him. At this time, a guest at the table next to them turned around and said, "Young man, you have to look carefully. That's Ongquangsung's man. Ongquangsung is now a big deal. You can't just mess with him." Xianxia turned his head to look at the guest behind him, then glanced at the simple dishes on the table. He smiled and said, "If you don't mind, please come over and have a drink with me. I have something to ask." The person was a slightly sloppy old man. He laughed and said, "Then I won't stand on ceremony." He stood up. Xianxia smiled and stretched out his hand. "Please." The old man came over and sat down. Xianxia poured him a glass of wine and toasted him together with Guan Yu. After the old man ate a few mouthfuls of food, Xianxia said respectfully, "I heard from you that Ongquangsung is now a big deal. I'm ignorant, so I hope you can enlighten me." Chapter 37. I can't say that I'm teaching you, I've only heard about it from the grapevine. However, in recent years, Ongquangsung has been stirring up chaos in the cultivation world. The cause of this matter seems to be the Phantom Palace, robbing Ongquangsung of a batch of spirit stones. The old man said. Xianxia's eyelids twitched and asked, "Is the palace lord of Phantom Palace called 100 Charm Beauty?" "Yes." The old man nodded and sighed. Phantom Palace is ranked 5th in the Devil Dao. But for some reason they actually mustered a large force to rob Ongquangsung's spirit stones mine. Ongquangsung has been silent in the cultivation world for many years, and his disciples are said to be getting worse with each generation. But this matter completely angered Ongquangsung. Rumor has it that Ongquangsung's back mountain has more than 30 crossing tribulation stage cultivators. This is more than 30 crossing tribulation stage cultivators. Looking at the entire righteous and devil Dao, how many sects can take out such a number? These people brought nearly 100 nascent soul stage elders to attack the Demon Illusion Palace. In just half a day, the Demon Illusion Palace, which is ranked 5th in the Devil Path, was removed from the list. The palace master and several elders were severely wounded and disappeared. So powerful, Guan Yu said in shock. Xianxia didn't have much of an idea of the so-called strength of the various sects in the cultivation world, but he didn't expect that the righteous Dao, which is ranked 6th, would attack the devil Dao, which is ranked 5th in less than half a day. After staying in Ongquang-tsung for so long, he only knew that Ongquang-tsung was ranked 6th. As for how strong the 6th was, he was completely clueless. However, the Phantom Palace was also quite unlucky. They wanted to rob spirit stones, but they didn't manage to do so. All the spirit stones went into other people's pockets. In the end, they brought disaster upon themselves. It was just a pity that the beautiful palace mistress was gone. He wondered how she was doing now. Yu Qianzhou smiled sheepishly at the thought of the huge pile of spirit stones in his hands, and the food and drinks in front of him were all exchanged with those spirit stones. This Ongquang-tsung is really amazing. Not only the Phantom Palace, but also some of the small devil sects that have offended Ongquang-tsung in recent years have all been eradicated. Ongquang-tsung's series of actions were truly amazing. The balance of power in the entire cultivation world has been completely broken. I'm afraid that this rare peace in the cultivation world will set off another storm. The old man shook his head. He ate a mouthful of food and drank a glass of wine. He glanced at Yu Qianzhou and teased, "That's why I told you not to provoke Ongquang-tsung." "Of course not. I just took a second glance at him because he's so pretty." Yu Qianzhou replied awkwardly. Seeing Guan Yu and the old man laughing wretchedly, he couldn't help but change the topic and asked, "Senior, you have an extraordinary appearance. May I ask which sect are you from?" The smile on the old man's face froze. He touched his face and looked at himself. He said, "You're such a hypocrite. This is the first time I've heard someone say that I have an extraordinary appearance." Yu Qianzhou quickly said, "I'm talking about inner qualities, inner qualities." Guan Yu laughed quietly at the side. It seems that this old man is ignorant and inexperienced. It turns out that you can use extraordinary appearance to describe inner qualities. Forget it. I won't argue with you because of the good wine and dishes. This old man is 10,000 demons Zhou Xian. The old man said indifferently. Guan Yu was shocked and said, "You're from the number 1 devil sect, 10,000 demons?" "What? This old man is from 10,000 demons. What's wrong with that?" Zhou Yuan said as he glanced at Yu Qianzhou. He felt strange. He had noticed that this young man in front of him was a cultivator, but he couldn't see through his cultivation. This was really strange. Could it be that this young man's cultivation was higher than his? Yu Qianzhou didn't know what Zhou Yuan was thinking. He didn't mind which sect 10,000 demons belonged to. To him, the so-called devil sect was similar to the mafia. He cupped his hands and said, "So it's Senior Qiu. I've heard a lot about you. I've heard a lot about you." Zhou Yuan's face twitched and said, "What are you talking about? Have you heard of this old man's name?" This old man is so stubborn. He knows that I'm just being polite, but he doesn't give me any face." Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, "Let's not talk about it. Let's drink and eat." After eating and drinking, the two of them politely sent Zhou Yuan out of 100 Flowers' house. After that, Yu Qianzhou wanted to go upstairs to meet his goddess sister. However, he was stopped by Guan Yu and wanted to go to the night market. He didn't have the mood to do that, but it was still early. Lu Jingguang might still be with Chu Ping'er, so he listened to Guan Yu and the two of them strolled around with full stomachs. Guan Yu suddenly saw the pouch on Yu Qianzhou's waist. His eyes lit up and he said, "I've never used a storage pouch. I want one too." "Go buy one then. I'll just walk around here. Come back and find me." Yu Qianzhou nodded. Guan Yu stretched out his hand and said, "Give it to me." "Give what?" "Spiritual stones to buy a storage pouch." "Damn. You live and eat from me. Don't you think it's too much to ask for pocket money from me? Didn't you say you'll be my boss and let me follow you? Also, the spiritual stones I have are not enough to buy a storage pouch. You're not so stingy as a boss, right? You have so many." Yu Qianzhou quickly interrupted, "All right, stop yelling. I'll give it to you." He pretended to take out a high-grade spiritual stone from his storage pouch. Guan Yu took the spiritual stone and shook his head. "It's not enough. Give me more. The 100 Flowers Valley has a lot of exotic flowers and plants. I want to buy some seeds for your sister." "Buy a gift for my sister? Don't tell me you like my sister. I advise you to give up on this idea. If she's not happy, you'll be in trouble." Yu Qianzhou said suspiciously. "Don't let your imagination run wild. Didn't you say your sister likes flowers and plants? Do you want me to learn from her?" Guan Yu said. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He remembered that he did say that to him. It turned out that he was reaping what he sowed. He took out a handful of spiritual stones with a pained expression and gritted his teeth. You really don't know the cost of daily necessities. Go back after you're done. I'm not going to shop anymore. He turned around and left. His good mood was ruined by Guan Yu. Which room is Chu Ping staying in? Yu Qianzhou paced back and forth in the hallway of the upper room of Hundred Flowers Valley. He just asked the shopkeeper downstairs, but the shopkeeper told him with a smile that he couldn't tell him. Just looking at Chu Ping made people think of her beautiful figure. It really made people anxious. Without a choice, Yu Qianzhou looked around to make sure there was no one around. He tiptoed and pressed his face against the door to eavesdrop one by one. After 7 or 8 rooms, he heard Lu Jingguang's fawning voice in front of one of the rooms. Seeing that the room was right next to his, he couldn't help but press his ear against it to hear what he was saying. Chapter 38. Inside the room, Chu Ping sat on both sides of a bright carved round table, quietly listening to Lu Jingguang's flattering words. Looking at Lu Jingguang's uncontrollable arrogant expression, she sighed in her heart. Was this still the senior brother Lu that she had dreamed of? In her impression, senior brother Lu had an elegant temperament, was gentle and kind, and was the dream lover of all the female disciples of Ong Kwang-tsung. She didn't know when it started, but she had slowly grown tired of him. Looking at the face that she had once thought was the most handsome in the world, Chu Ping's eyes slowly moved away, and an ordinary face quietly appeared in her heart. In the forbidden pool, he was so scared that he hugged his clothes and hid. After that, he stopped a man with a bloody nose. At that time, the man was so scared that he couldn't speak properly. He looked so stupid in his panic. In the end, he actually got kicked down the mountain by him. But how could she blame herself for that? At that time he was alone. She couldn't help but misunderstand, and it was a deep misunderstanding. He even had the urge to kill him. If it wasn't for the peeping in the forbidden cave, she didn't know how long she would have misunderstood. Elder Hao's death, that silent cry, and the blood he spat out, all showed his true feelings. Just think about it, how could such a person do such a dirty thing? Facing the sect leader without fear, facing him bluntly, how many disciples of Ong Kwang-tsung could do that? Facing the scolding of trash, how many people could do that? If it wasn't for senior brother Lu's palm, Ong Kwang-tsung probably wouldn't know that he was the kind of person who was willing to live in obscurity. Facing the song that was sung all over the world, he clearly knew that he was the one who composed it, but he didn't seek fame or profit, turning a deaf ear to it. If I didn't expose it in front of you, would you continue to hide it like this? When I saw your helpless and miserable smile in the spirit stone mine, do you know how much my heart hurt? When I heard that you were killed by the demonic path in the spirit stone mine, do you know how many times I cried for you in the middle of the night? Do you know how happy I am to see you appear in front of me silently again today? He actually lived here as well. Could this be the so-called fate? Recalling Yu Qianzhou's sign language, Chu Ping smiled. As for what Lu Jingguang was saying, it could be said that he wasn't listening at all. Yu Qianzhou and Lu Jingguang, who were eavesdropping outside the door, naturally did not know what she was thinking. If Yu Qianzhou found out about it, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lu Jingguang also noticed that his junior sister was a little distracted. He was slightly stunned and stopped talking. But Chu Ping was still in a trance. Lu Jingguang's face showed a hint of anger. As the direct grandson of the Azure Light Sect's sect leader, his status could be said to be extraordinary. Which of the female disciples in the sect did not secretly have a crush on him? The woman in front of him was also the same. He knew all of this, but he had a long-term ambition, wholeheartedly devoting himself to cultivation. When he was successful and famous, these female disciples would be at his mercy. Not so long ago, Chu Ping actually distanced herself from him. The way she looked at him also lost that strange look. Finally, she attracted his attention. Compared to the other female disciples, she was the most outstanding one. The most outstanding female disciple actually lost interest in him. This was undoubtedly a provocation to him, who was used to being high and mighty. How could he bear it? Therefore he took the initiative to approach Chu Ping. But the result of his pursuit was that he seemed to be getting further and further away. Thinking of this, Lu Jingguang's facial muscles twitched. He took a deep breath and adjusted his emotions. He picked up the teacup on the table and touched it lightly. The sound of the teacup woke up Chu Ping'er from her trance. Lu Jingguang smiled and said gently, "Junior sister. The whole of Kwangtsung knows my feelings for you. Don't tell me you don't know?" Chu Ping'er hesitated for a moment and nodded lightly. This time she followed Lu Jingguang out to play alone under the persuasion of Grandmaster Lu Wanqian. Before she came, Grandmaster had already made it clear that he hoped that she and Lu Jingguang could become cultivation partners. Due to the pressure from Grandmaster, she was already prepared to yield. What else could she do if she didn't yield? In Kwangtsung, there were some things that a lowly disciple like her could not decide. But she never expected to meet Senior Uncle Yu, who should have been dead a long time ago here. "Bastard, you really want to woo my girl? How could you say such a disgusting confession? I'm so angry. My dear fairy sister, for the sake of the next generation of the cultivation world, you must hold your ground." Outside the door, Yu Qianzhou listened to her and cursed under his breath. Seeing that Chu Ping'er was unmoved, Lu Jingguang frowned and took out a long jade archive. He said, "Junior sister, take a look at this." Chu Ping'er reached out and took it. Turning it over and over, she said doubtfully, "It looks very ordinary. It's neither too long nor too short. I can't tell what's so special about it." Outside the door, Yu Qianzhou's expression changed. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't defeat Lu Jingguang, he would have kicked the door open to see what the adulterous couple was up to. He thought to himself, "Lu Jingguang, don't tell me you've even taken out the tool to carry on the family line. How King shameless." What he heard next made him heave a sigh of relief. "Junior sister. This jade archive is no ordinary item. I've heard that 3,000 years ago, there was a pill grandmaster in the cultivation world, right? This is the pill formula that countless generations of the pill grandmaster have painstakingly compiled," Lu Jingguang said. "A pill formula?" Chu Ping'er stared at the jade archive in her hand and exclaimed, "Is this the pill grandmaster who used to be the #1 sect of the righteous path for countless years? Wasn't it said that they were destroyed by the combined forces of the devil path 3,000 years ago? How could something that belonged to them fall into your hands?" It was no wonder that Chu Ping'er was so shocked. Pill formulas were the most precious things in the cultivation world. A good pill formula was enough to set off a bloodbath in the cultivation world. Although absorbing the spiritual energy contained within spirit stones could increase one's cultivation, for those who had reached a certain level of cultivation, spirit stones weren't very useful. Things were different with a good pill formula. With a good pill formula, consuming one pill would be equivalent to a year of bitter cultivation or even several years. For cultivators, advancing from one stage to another was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. Just like how Yu Qianzhou needed a foundation building pill to advance from the Qi training stage to the foundation building stage. Although foundation building pills were precious in the cultivation world, almost every sect had the pill formula to refine them. But what about pills that could allow one to advance from the core bearing stage to the nascent soul stage and the tribulation stage? Although every sect had their own secret recipes and treasured them like treasures, the effects of consuming them depended on one's luck. It seemed that only a small portion of people were lucky. From this, it could be seen how precious a good pill formula was in the cultivation world. It was definitely not inferior to a good transcendent artifact. The Pill Grandmaster was one of the cultivation sects that excelled in this field. It was rumored that once their disciples reached a certain level of cultivation, they would have a 30% chance of breaking through after consuming the pill. Do not underestimate this 30%. If Kwangtsung had 100 original infant stage cultivators, and 30% of them broke through to the tribulation stage, what would that mean? That would be an additional 30 tribulation stage cultivators. This kind of probability was something that none of the sects dared to think about. Chapter 39. Chu Ping'er's surprised expression made him very satisfied. Lu Jingguang said a little proudly, "My grandfather obtained it by chance when he annihilated a small devil sect some time ago. The different levels of pill formulas on it were enchanted with different levels of restriction. It's funny that the devil sect couldn't break the restriction, so they threw it aside for so many years. Hehe. The first level of restriction has been broken by my grandfather. Some of the pill formulas inside are really extraordinary." Chu Ping'er frowned and said, This is the spoils of war of the sect and such an important treasure. It should belong to the sect. Why did the sect head give it to you? When she asked this question, she actually suspected that the Lu grandfather and grandson wanted to keep this treasure for themselves. Of course we have to hand it over. Who dares to keep this thing for themselves? Even if they keep it for themselves, who can rely on their own ability to gather all the medicinal ingredients on the pill formulas? But my grandfather said that whoever gives this thing to the sect will be given a great credit. My grandfather is already the sect head of Tsang, so. Lu Xingguang smiled meaningfully. Looking at Chu Ping'er, he said slowly, so my grandfather said that this thing should be given to the sect by me. Then the great credit will naturally fall on me. The purpose of coming out this time is to find a very good reason to hand this thing over to the sect. Otherwise, I won't even go out of the mountain gate of Tsang. Taking this thing out will only arouse suspicion. Chu Ping'er was slightly shocked. First of all, the dignified sect head of Tsang would actually do such a thing. It was simply unbelievable. Second, he even told such a secret to her. Wasn't that forcing her to obey him? Yu Qianchou, who was outside the door, pricked up his ears. Something that could make the Lu grandfather and grandson spend so much effort on it was definitely not an ordinary treasure. He didn't expect this secret to be accidentally heard by him. Yu Qianchou didn't even dare to breathe loudly as he looked at the two ends of the corridor. Seeing that it was still quiet, he put his ear to it again. In fact, if it weren't for the inexplicable special effect of the golden bead, how could he eavesdrop on Lu Xingguang's conversation with his cultivation? He would have been discovered long ago. However, although this merit is great, I am not willing to enjoy it alone. As long as Junior Martial's sister agrees to be my Dao companion and cultivate together, I am willing to give you half of the merit. When I hand it over, I will report to the sect that this treasure was discovered by both of us together. What do you think, junior sister? Lu Xingguang threw out a condition that he thought was very attractive. Chu Ping'er was in a dilemma. Ever since she saw Yu Qianchou downstairs, she had already given up on the idea of dual cultivation with Lu Xingguang. But now that Lu Xingguang had told her everything, she had no choice but to agree. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Junior Martial's sister. Can't I move you with my sincerity? Lu Xingguang saw that she was still hesitating. His tone was a little unhappy and his words were already mixed with threats. Chu Ping'er naturally heard it. She bit her lips and said with a smile, Senior Martial brother, such a great merit suddenly appeared and fell on me. My mind is a little confused. Can you let me have some peace and quiet? I will definitely give Senior Martial brother an answer tomorrow. Then I won't disturb Junior Martial sister's rest. Lu Xingguang stood up and replied readily. Chu Ping'er stood up and said, Senior Martial brother, take care. Lu Xingguang nodded. His eyes swept over the latter's beautiful face and full chest, and then glanced at the gums in the room. In his mind he could already imagine Junior Martial's sister moaning under him tomorrow. He didn't think that Junior Martial's sister could refuse the temptation he threw out. He walked out with a smile on his face. As soon as Lu Xingguang returned to his room and closed the door next to Chu Ping'er's quietly opened. Chu Ping'er sighed. Just as she was about to close the door, Yu Qianchou stood in front of her with a smile. Chu Ping'er's eyes lit up. Before she could react, Yu Qianchou had already squeezed in. In the process he smelled a faint fragrance. He couldn't help but take a deep breath. Based on his experience from his previous life, Chu Ping'er was still a virgin. Martial uncle Yu. Chu Ping'er closed the door and locked it. She held back her surprise and greeted. Yu Qianchou waved his hand and said with a smile, No need to be so polite. We haven't seen each other for a long time. After saying that, he sat down. Ever since we parted ways at the Spirit Stone Mine in Tsang, it's been a year since I last saw you, Martial uncle. Chu Ping'er said faintly and sat opposite him. We will naturally meet again if we are fated. Look, aren't we meeting each other now? Yu Qianchou laughed heartily. I heard that Martial uncle was killed by the Devil Dao in the Spirit Stone Mine. The whole of Tsang thought that you were really dead. I didn't expect to meet Martial uncle here. That's right. Since Martial uncle is fine, why didn't you return to Tsang? Since Chu Ping'er had doubts in her heart, she naturally had to ask. As she spoke, she got a clean cup, poured some tea and placed it on the opposite side. Fortunately, I am lucky. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to see you again. Shaking his head and sighing, Yu Qianzhou drank the tea in one gulp. He said, "Answer Ong Kwang-tsung? If I had really returned to Ong Kwang-tsung, I'm afraid that not even my bones could be found. Do you think the sect master and Wu Baoer would let me go? Rather than losing my life, I would rather live a carefree life as a loose cultivator." Chu Ping'er thought that what he said was true. If she had stayed in Ong Kwang-tsung, she was afraid that she would not have had a good ending. After pouring another cup of tea for him, she slowly asked, "Martial uncle, how have you been wandering outside for more than a year? So I can be considered to be doing okay." Chu Ping'er looked at Yu Qianzhou. She didn't quite believe it. In the cultivation world, if a loose cultivator didn't have a high cultivation and didn't have the protection of a sect, how many of them could have a good life? He was still the same. He would bear all the pain alone. She just didn't know when she would be able to see him again after this. Thinking of this, she couldn't help but ask, "Martial uncle, are you really not going to return to Ong Kwang-tsung?" "I'm not going back, Yu Qianzhou suddenly asked. "You won't tell Ong Kwang-tsung that I'm still alive, will you?" Chu Ping'er was stunned. She felt as if her heart had been pierced by a needle. She then bit her lips and said slowly after a long time, "Is Chu Ping'er so untrustworthy in Martial Uncle's eyes? Damn. This girl was stimulated. That's not right. Why does it feel a little weird? Could it be that this girl has fallen in love with me?" Thinking of this, he felt that his judgment was not wrong. He was ecstatic and secretly had a plan. He didn't dare to say anything to stimulate Chu Ping'er anymore. He quickly changed the topic and said, "Since I've left Ong Kwang-tsung, you don't need to call me Martial Uncle anymore. Call me by my name from now on. Let's be friends. By the way, can I call you Ping'er from now on?" After that, he drank the tea in front of him. Ping'er. What an intimate name. With this sentence, the hidden bitterness on Chu Ping'er's face disappeared without a trace. She stared at Yu Qianzhou affectionately with her eyes and nodded. Then he stood up and filled the teapot with water. Yu Qianzhou was now 100% sure that Chu Ping'er was really interested in him. He raised his hand and touched his nose. A trace of a smile flashed across his face. Suddenly, he reached out and grabbed the hand that was pouring the tea. He could clearly feel that the other party's hand was stiff, but she didn't pull it back. She still let him hold it. What was he trying to do? Chu Ping'er's face was red. Her heart couldn't help but beat wildly. She didn't dare to look at him directly. Chapter 40. Her little hands were so soft and smooth. Yu Qianzhou was very pleased with himself. He put down the teapot from her hands and said gently, "Ping-er, don't move. There's something in your hair. Let me help you remove it." As he spoke, he stood up and slowly pulled Chu Ping'er over. As Yu Qianzhou's hand reached out to her hair, a strand of grass appeared in her hair as if by magic. Yu Qianzhou gently plucked it and placed it in front of her eyes. He immediately let go of her hand. "So there really was something in my hair. I thought." Chu Ping'er was secretly ashamed of herself for thinking in the wrong direction. Her face was so red that it couldn't get any redder. Who would have thought that Yu Qianzhou would slightly bend down and put his mouth next to her ear and softly say, "Ping-er, why is your body so fragrant?" Chu Ping'er's body trembled. Her delicate ear was disturbed by the hot breath coming from the man in front of her. She immediately felt unbearable. Especially when she smelled the man's body odor at such a close distance, her body felt a little weak. She wanted to step back, but her legs seemed to have no strength at all. She couldn't move at all. Her heart was beating so hard that even she could hear it. "Ping-er, you smell so good. I want to hug you. Can I?" Yu Qianzhou whispered softly in her ear. His lips were almost touching her bright red earlobe. Yu Qianzhou's words were like a devil's whisper. Chu Ping'er unexpectedly responded with an N. "The first to strike has the upper hand. The last to strike will suffer. Little sister, big brother is coming." This thought flashed through Yu Qianzhou's mind. He was very proud of himself. The fairy sister that he had coveted for a long time was about to fall into his hands. This happiness came too suddenly and too unexpectedly. Even he didn't think it would happen. The hot breath from his mouth incessantly stimulated the other party's ears. His hands gently passed through the slender waist that was wrapped in silk and slowly hugged it. He slowly pulled it over and gradually hugged that curvy and fragrant body. When the two bodies were glued together, Chu Pinger's eyes blurred as she let out a moan. How bouncy. Xianxia was stimulated. His mouth and hands started to get naughty. Chu Pinger's body also twisted uneasily and hugged him. Feeling that Chu Pinger was slowly responding, Xianxia also became aroused. He murmured, Pinger, I want you. He didn't know how to control his hands anymore. Ah. Chu Pinger couldn't help but cry out in pain. He immediately woke up and pushed Xianxia's chest with both hands. He panted and said, Xianxia, we can't do this. We can't do this. No. I want you right now. Xianxia said and wanted to stick to her again. Chu Pinger used all her strength to resist and almost begged, Xianxia, I beg you, we really can't do it here. Senior Marshal brother Lu Xingguang also lives here. Hearing Lu Xingguang's name, Xianxia's head that was clouded by lust also woke up. Now was indeed not the time. Let's not talk about whether Chu Pinger would agree or not. He had already made up his mind to steal Lu Xingguang's treasure. He couldn't delay this matter. Thinking of this, he could only let go of Chu Pinger helplessly. Chu Pinger gently leaned on Xianxia's body. Her face was still red, as if she was happy that Xianxia could listen to her. She listened to his strong heartbeat and said slowly, Xianxia, don't worry. Pinger's body will only belong to you in this lifetime. Pinger will definitely give it to you next time. Xianxia hugged her and responded helplessly. However, his hands were still taking advantage of her body. Not long after, Chu Pinger let out a soft moan. She was a little aroused by his restless hands again. She quickly grabbed his hand and held it in her own. She snuggled in his arms and asked softly, Xianxia, do you think I'm a little frivolous for agreeing so quickly? No, I like it. After Xianxia finished speaking, he sat on the stool and pulled Chu Pinger over to sit on his lap. Then do you like me? Chu Pinger turned her head and looked at him. Silly. Needless to say, of course I do. Then when did you start to like me? Today. Chu Pinger asked without blinking. Well, since the first day I came to this world, I like you. I often dream of you. Chu Pinger clenched her fist and hit him. She said coquettishly, You're so annoying. I'm happy that you lied to me. I want to hear the truth. You really want to hear it? Yes. Xianxia saw that she didn't believe him even if he told the truth. He could only say half the truth. AI? Then I'll tell you the truth. Ever since I saw you naked in the forbidden pool of Ongquangsung, I started to like you. What? Chu Pinger exclaimed. Her half-lying body suddenly sat up. She couldn't believe that Xianxia really saw her naked. Anger gradually appeared on her face. She was cheated. Her chest rose and fell violently due to her rapid breathing. I love you, Xianxia said softly. Whether it was the previous life or this life, these words were very lethal. Chu Pinger immediately fell into his arms. He smiled and said, Pinger, why are you so excited? I didn't mean to see it. I originally wanted to go to the stone cave in the forbidden area. Who knew that there would be a beautiful blue light sect female disciple who took off her clothes? AI. This must be heaven's will for us to be together. You're still talking. Chu Pinger bashfully punched him again. He had seen all the parts of her body that he shouldn't have seen. He had touched all the parts that he shouldn't have touched. There was only one last step left. What else could she do now? This was fate. It's not like you'll lose a piece of meat just by looking. Xianxia laughed. Chu Pinger immediately punched him 12 times. Xianxia laughed and grabbed her hand. He said, All right, Pinger, don't mess around. I have something serious to ask you. Seeing that she finally became obedient, he asked again, Pinger, why did you follow Lu Xingguang to the 100 Flowers Valley this time? Chu Pinger pondered for a while and immediately told him everything that had happened, including the fact that Lu Xingguang had the prescription. Xianxia listened carefully. When he heard that Chu Pinger clearly told him the content of the conversation between her and Lu Xingguang in the room, he compared it with what he had overheard outside. He found that there was nothing to hide. He immediately smiled with relief. Chapter 41. In fact, there were 2 reasons for his question just now. First, he wanted to know what Lu Xingguang's jade butterfly formula looked like so that he could avoid making a mistake. Secondly, he wanted to know if Chu Pinger truly loved him wholeheartedly. If there was anything that she was deliberately hiding, if she was hiding something, Chu Ping would never expect Yu Qianzhou to treat her wholeheartedly. He was afraid that she would be thrown onto the bed, stripped naked and raped on the spot. After that he would abandon her and kill her. Yu Qianzhou would never be reluctant to part with her. It was not wrong to say that he was ruthless. Although he usually laughed and laughed, deep down he was still the boss of the underworld in his previous life. Think about it, how many people could become the boss of the underworld from nothing? How many of them were good people? Chu Ping'er leaned against Yu Qianzhou, lying docilely in his arms. She probably never thought that she had just escaped from the gates of hell. Yu Qianzhou's joking face showed a rare gentle expression. His fingers gently stroked Chu Ping'er's beautiful hair. Ping-oh. Don't go back to Ong Kwang Tsung. Come with me. No. Chu Ping'er paused and said, I also want to go with you, but how can I explain to my master? My master has always been very good to me. I'm afraid that he will be worried if I leave without a word. Your master is Lu Wanqian's disciple? I'm really worried about leaving you alone in Ong Kwang Tsung. Moreover, Lu Xingguang has ulterior motives towards you. Yu Qianzhou said worriedly. Hehe. Chu Ping turned around and looked at him with a smile. What's wrong? Are you worried that I will be taken advantage of by Lu Xingguang? Yu Qianzhou said solemnly. I'm not worried, I'm very worried. Both the grandfather and grandson of the Lu family are nothing good, and Ong Kwang Tsung and that bunch of bullshit elders are all beasts in human clothing. I know that better than you do. You're just a little disciple of Ong Kwang Tsung. How could you possibly defeat them? Although his words were not very pleasant to hear, Chu Ping'er knew that he was really worried about her. After a sweet smile, she said to him solemnly, Master has been very kind to me. I am an orphan. When I was very young, Master brought me up the mountain to cultivate. She has always treated me like her own daughter. Among all the female disciples, Master treats me the best. If I leave without saying anything, not only will Master worry, I will also feel very guilty. Is your master a man or a woman? Yu Qianzhou suddenly asked in an untimely manner. Woman, why are you asking this? Chu Ping'er asked curiously. Oh, then I'm relieved. Chu Ping'er was stunned for a moment, but she immediately reacted. She punched him again and said, Why is your head filled with all these messed up things? Yu Qianzhou laughed. In fact, he really wanted to say, You're too pure. It was no wonder that he would have such a thought. In his previous life he had been through a lot of dirty things. He had seen too many dark things. When he looked at things, it was inevitable that he would consider more negative things. He belonged to the kind of person who was more suspicious and didn't trust others easily. Sigh. Looks like I can't persuade you. Yu Qianzhou sighed softly and suddenly hugged Chu Ping'er. What are you doing? Chu Ping'er cried out in surprise and joy. Yu Qianzhou smiled calmly and said, Do you trust me? Chu Ping'er was as happy as a cat in Yu Qianzhou's arms and nodded. Yu Qianzhou was moved. He lowered his head and kissed her forehead lightly. Then he said, Ping'er, listen to me. Remember what I said. I agreed to let you go back to Ong Kwang Tsung. It's not that I don't want you to stay. I really want you to stay, but I don't want you to be in a difficult position. If I see you in a difficult position, I will feel even worse than you. Do you understand? After you go back to Ong Kwang Tsung, you must remember to protect yourself at all costs. As long as you still have me in your heart, treat it as protecting yourself for me. You must make yourself well. Ping'er, remember, no matter what happens in the future, I will definitely find you. Even if I die, my soul will find you and let you know that I'm here. I don't want you to die. Chu Ping'er immediately covered his mouth and said with tears, I want you to come back to me alive. I will definitely live well and wait for you to come back to me. Yu Qianzhou smiled gently and said, As long as you can do it, I will definitely do it. No one can stop me. Ping'er, you have to remember our separation today is for a better reunion in the future. Chu Ping'er nodded desperately with tears in her eyes. Seeing that she was crying, Yu Qianzhou wanted to ease the atmosphere. He put her down and said, I have something to ask of you. Ping'er, will you agree? Chu Ping'er said with tears in her eyes, As long as I can do it, I will agree to anything. Yu Qianzhou said disapprovingly, This is something that you can do easily. I'm just afraid that you will not agree to it when the time comes. Do you not trust me that much? Chu Ping'er was a little angry. but she suddenly saw Yu Qianqiu's face revealing a trace of a strange smile. She couldn't help being startled and said with slight apprehension, "Don't tell me you want me to do that thing with you again? I already said that it's not convenient for Lu Zhengguang to live here." Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He immediately understood what she was talking about. He secretly thought that this girl's awareness was too high. He couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "Am I such a lowly person?" Chu Ping'er was so embarrassed that her face turned red. She stamped her feet and said, "If it's not that thing, then say it. I will agree to it, okay? This is what you said, you can't go back on your words." Yu Qianqiu put his mouth next to her ear and said softly, "My hand is a little itchy." As he said that, his hand had already slid down the smooth skin of a certain someone's collar. Chu Ping'er's body trembled, but she didn't resist. She only heard her muttering, "You still say that you're not a lowly person, but I've never seen someone more." Gradually, an uncontrollable moan came out of her mouth. Yu Qianqiu, who had succeeded in his plot, happily pulled out his hand and put it in front of his nose to smell it. He said, "It smells so good." Chu Ping'er was so embarrassed that she almost couldn't lift her face. "Wait for me, I will go out for a while and come back soon." Yu Qianqiu seemed to suddenly think of something. After saying that, he opened the door and went out, then closed the door. Chu Ping'er didn't know what he was going to do when he went out, so she hurriedly tidied up her collar that was loosened by that bad guy's hand. Yu Qianqiu came back very quickly. After he came in and closed the door, he took out a small exquisite bag and said with a smile, "I just bought it, it's for you." "It's a storage bag. What a beautiful storage bag, I have never used it before." Chu Ping'er, who received the gift, was very happy. After playing with it for a while, she suddenly frowned and said, "This thing is very expensive, it must be hard for you to be alone outside. Why do you need to spend this money?" "Hee. As long as you like it, spending a little money is nothing. Your husband doesn't have anything else but money. In the storage bag I have 100 high-grade spirit stones, 1,000 mid-grade spirit stones and 10,000 low-grade spirit stones. You can keep it on you in case you need it when I am not here," Yu Qianqiu said with a smile. Chapter 42. The items in the storage pouch were just as Yu Qianqiu had said. Chu Ping'er, who had used her divine sense to check, was shocked. She asked doubtfully, "Where did you get so many spirit stones?" Yu Qianqiu smiled and didn't answer her directly. He just hugged her and said, "Take good care of yourself." Then he turned around and walked out. Chu Ping'er reluctantly shouted, "I'll wait for you." Yu Qianqiu didn't tell her that he was living next door. He didn't go back to his room either. He went straight to Guan Yu's room and pushed the door open. Guan Yu had returned and was fiddling with a lot of things on the table. When he saw Yu Qianqiu, he nodded with a smile. It was a good feeling to have money to spend. Why do you have a woman's fragrance?" Guan Yu's nose flared as he sniffed Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu was worried and impatiently asked, "How long will it take to get to supporting Immortal Island from here? I want to go there as soon as possible." Guan Yu was startled and his expression sank. Yu Qianqiu would naturally use the supporting Immortal token to go to supporting Immortal Island. Once he used it, he would never have the chance to go back. However, his natal primordial spirit was in the hands of others. What could he do? He sighed and said, "There's a shop on supporting Immortal Island in the 100 Flowers Valley. They use flying artifacts to transport things every day. If you show the supporting Immortal token to the shopkeeper, they will naturally take you there." Yu Qianqiu pondered for a bit and had a plan. He patted Guan Yu's shoulder and sent him into his space without caring if he was happy or not. He also swept the things on the table into his space. Then a long and thin pipe appeared in his hand. This was something he had bought outside. Today, when he was strolling in the market, a man suddenly pulled him to the side and asked if he wanted anything good. Yu Qianqiu asked him what it was, and the man pulled him to the side, took out the thing and told him that it was called Fallen Immortal, and it was specially made to deal with cultivators. To put it bluntly, it was a sleeping gas specially made for cultivators. It was very effective against cultivators below the core formation stage. Yu Qianqiu was overjoyed. The two of them immediately ran into the wilderness and caught a few wild beasts to experiment. Sure enough, the effect was miraculous. Yu Qianqiu was so happy that he exclaimed that the man was a talent. In the end, he accidentally put the man into his own space. The two ends of the pipe had small holes sealed with wax, and there was a fuse halfway up the waist. Xianxia took out a flint and lit the fuse. The fuse dragged sparks as it drilled into the pipe. Then the pipe made a light pop sound and he felt a slight warmth in his hand. Xianxia nodded with satisfaction. He took it to the corridor and looked around to see that there was no one around. Then he gently touched the door of Lu Xingguang's room and listened carefully to see if there was any movement inside. He unscrewed the wax seal on the two ends of the pipe and gently inserted one end into the crack of the door. He put the other end in his mouth and gently blew. Inside the room, Lu Xingguang was sitting cross-legged in meditation. With his cultivation he had actually heard a little movement outside the door. He concentrated and didn't find anyone, so he didn't care. This was mainly because he was arrogant and had never suffered a loss in the cultivation world. Moreover, he had never heard of anyone from the righteous and devil Dao daring to cause trouble in the 100 Flowers Valley. A wisp of green smoke slowly floated out from the crack of the door and gradually filled the whole room. Sitting cross-legged, Lu Xingguang's nose slightly moved and he secretly wondered what was so fragrant. Then he felt that the genuine qi in his body became heavy and slowed down. He frowned and opened his eyes to see the room filled with green smoke. Even though Lu Xingguang didn't have any experience at this time, he also found that he had been tricked. He was shocked and just got up from the bed. He suddenly felt dizzy. He opened his mouth to shout, but before he could shout, his eyes suddenly went black and he fell to the ground with a bang. Xianxia had been guarding outside. He was not worried at all. Anyway, if he was discovered, he could hide in the golden bead. Hearing the sound of someone falling to the ground inside, he secretly said that he had succeeded. He put his palm on the door and exerted a little force. The bolt inside popped open. With his current level of cultivation, opening a door was a piece of cake. Moreover, in the cultivation world, this kind of door was just for show. Even if the door was bolted like this, it wouldn't be able to stop anyone. Only the sound of the bolt opening could alert the person inside. However, the person inside had already fainted. Pushing the door open, Xianxia quickly went inside. When he saw Lu Xingguang lying on the ground, he closed the door again. He walked straight over and without saying a word, lifted his leg and kicked the person lying on the ground. Feeling his unvented fire, he kicked a few more times, cursing as he kicked. "How dare you flirt with my girl? You're courting death." After feeling a little better, he took off the storage pouch on Lu Xingguang's waist and opened it. He released his divine sense to investigate. Sure enough, he found a jade archive that was exactly the same as the one Chu Ping'er had described. When he used his divine sense to investigate the jade archive, he found that the layers of restrictions inside were completely undetectable. Only the first layer was unlocked. He reckoned that it was the layer that Lu Chongqing had unlocked. There was a whole bunch of strange medicinal names. Xianxia had never heard of any of them before. He couldn't tell whether the jade archive was real or fake. After storing the storage pouch into his dimensional space, he immediately searched around the room. He didn't even let go of the bedding on the bed. After confirming that there was nothing else hidden, he stripped off Lu Xingguang's clothes and carefully examined them piece by piece. However, he didn't find anything. This guy has soft skin and tender flesh. No wonder he dared to seduce my girl, Xianxia muttered as he looked at the naked Lu Xingguang on the ground. If it weren't for the fact that he was afraid of bringing trouble to Chu Ping'er, he would have killed Lu Xingguang right there and then. However, he was unwilling to do so. His gaze fell on Lu Xingguang's genitals. Xianxia rubbed his nose and sneered. He glanced at the sword hanging by the bed and walked over to pull it out. He circled around the naked man on the ground and swung the sword in his hand at the genitals of Lu Xingguang's thighs. Blood splattered everywhere. I really don't trust this kind of person. I had no choice but to castrate him, Xianxia sighed. When he mentioned Chu Ping'er, his brows furrowed again. Lu Xingguang had only told Chu Ping'er about the pill formula. Now that it had been stolen and he had been castrated, the first person the Lu family's grandfather and grandson would suspect would be Chu Ping. This wouldn't do. Looking at Lu Xingguang's lower body bleeding all over the ground, Xianxia's tightly furrowed brows relaxed. He smiled lightly and took a brush from the brush rack on the side. He dipped it in the blood on the ground and scribbled a few lines of words on the wall. Lu Chongqing, I will take revenge for the extermination of my family in the future. I met your grandson by chance, so I will collect some interest first. After doing this, Yu Qianzhou walked out unhurriedly and closed the door. When he passed by Chu Pinger's room, he resisted the urge to go in again. He walked out of the 100 Flowers house and went straight to the shops around the square. He had seen the shops of Fuxian Island when he was strolling around during the day, so he naturally had to go there now. When he walked into the market, he thought about how he didn't know when he would be able to come back again, so he looked at the items on the stalls as he walked. As long as he found something useful, he directly bought it and threw it into his storage bag. He didn't even care about the price. Chapter 43. Daoist friend, what do you want to buy? Our shop's magic tools and pills are famous in the cultivation world. Let me take a look first. Yu Qianzhou looked at the items on the shelves. Just as the shopkeeper said, Fuxian Island's shop should mainly sell magic tools and pills. After looking for a while, Yu Qianzhou asked the shopkeeper, "Shopkeeper, are you in charge of this shop?" The shopkeeper was stunned and didn't know why he asked that. He smiled and said, "Isaacs elder is in charge here, but I can still make the decisions." Daoist friend, what do you want to buy? Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, "I want to see your elder." Seeing that the shopkeeper was still hesitating, he added, "I have something important to see your elder." While the shopkeeper was still muttering, a young man and woman with extraordinary looks came out of the house. Behind them was an old man. The shopkeeper smiled and greeted, "Young palace master, young lady." The young man and woman nodded. "Which family's young palace master and young lady are they?" Yu Qianzhou looked at the young man and woman. The young man had an extraordinary presence and the young lady was very beautiful, not inferior to Chu Ping. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but take a few more glances. The young man and woman glanced at Yu Qianzhou and didn't mind. Yu Qianzhou's appearance really didn't attract much attention. The young man and woman walked to the door and bowed to the old man behind them. "Marshal uncle, please stay." The old man nodded and said, "Go back and send my regards to your mother." The young man and woman said a few polite words and turned to leave. The old man also turned and walked into the house. "Elder Qin." The shopkeeper shouted and walked to the old man. He said respectfully, "Elder, this Daoist friend said he has something important to talk to you about." He pointed at Yu Qianzhou. The old man turned around to look at Yu Qianzhou. He sized him up and asked in confusion, "Is there something you need from me, little brother?" Yu Qianzhou didn't dare to put on any airs now. He hurriedly bowed and imitated the shopkeeper's greeting, "Elder Qin." He then took out the Immortal supporting token from his storage bag and handed it over. When Elder Qin saw what Yu Qianzhou took out, his eyelids twitched. He took it and examined it. He knew it was real and immediately said, "Come with me." Yu Qianzhou respectfully followed him into the inner room. The shopkeeper also saw that item. As he looked at the two of them, he muttered, "Is that an Immortal supporting token? It's been a long time since I've heard of an outsider holding this thing." At daybreak, Yu Qianzhou followed a person out of the 100 Flowers Valley. This person was Elder Qin's disciple. His name was Qing. He was in charge of transporting things between supporting Immortal Island and the 100 Flowers Valley. Today he was ordered by his master to bring Yu Qianzhou back to supporting Immortal Island. The two of them walked out of the 100 Flowers Valley's grand formation. Qing took out a small copper crane and threw it into the air after making a few hand seals. The copper crane grew with the wind and instantly turned into a big, lively Immortal crane. It circled in the sky and slowly landed in front of the two of them. Qing jumped onto the crane's back and looked at Yu Qianzhou. He smiled and said, "Come on up." Yu Qianzhou immediately jumped on. The former made a hand seal and shouted, "Rise." The big crane cried and flew into the sky. Yu Qianzhou wasn't paying attention and was almost thrown down. The crane circled twice and found the right direction to fly south. The speed of the crane was very fast. When people stood on it, the wind resistance was very strong. It almost blew them off. However, no matter how bad Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was, he could still stand steadily when he circulated his power. Qing saw Yu Qianzhou's embarrassment and couldn't help but smile. He asked, "Is this your first time riding a flying magic tool?" "Yes, I've never ridden it before." Yu Qianzhou didn't know how to address him, so he could only answer directly. Qing seemed to know what he was thinking and said, "Since you came with the supporting Immortal token, you will be a disciple of the same sect in the future." Our supporting Immortal Island isn't like other sects where there are generations of disciples. Seniority is determined by strength. Qi refining cultivators call foundation establishment cultivators martial uncles and so on. I'm a core formation cultivator, but I can't see through your cultivation. I wonder what stage your cultivation is at. Why didn't this damn Guan Yu tell me before? Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly. I'm Qi refining level 10, so I have to call you martial ancestor Qing. He didn't expect that his seniority in Ong Kwangtsung was so high, but now he was someone else's disciple. You don't have to be embarrassed. This is a very normal thing in our supporting Immortal Island. Maybe I'm your martial ancestor today, but in 2 years I might have to call you martial uncle. Qing Gingqing smiled. Martial ancestor Qing must be joking. How is that possible? Yu Qianzhou replied. Qing Gingqing was also a person who was easy to talk to. The two of them chatted and laughed along the way. In his previous life, Yu Qianzhou took a plane and flew in the sky. However, anyone with a normal body could sit on a plane. People who didn't cultivate really couldn't sit on a plane. If you didn't sit in the cabin, you would know what it felt like to stand outside the plane. However, there were benefits too. The great rivers and mountains below could be seen clearly from the top. After flying for more than half a day, they couldn't see the land below. It was all vast ocean. Yu Qianzhou knew that they were about to reach supporting Immortal Island. As expected, not long later, an island appeared on the surface of the ocean. The island was surrounded by clouds and mist. Qing Gingqing smiled. Supporting Immortal Island is in front. When they flew closer, they realized that it looked like a small island from afar. However, when they looked closer, they couldn't tell how big it was. The red-crowned crane descended and its speed slowed down. When it was about to land, Qing Gingqing sent out a finger seal from the depths of the clouds. The clouds opened up a path for the red-crowned crane to carry the two of them in. After passing through the clouds, Yu Qianzhou looked back. He couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. From the outside it looked like there were clouds, but from the inside there was nothing. It seemed like this was a formation to protect the island. Looking down, the pavilions and terraces really gave off the feeling of a paradise on earth. As expected of the number 1 sect of the righteous path. The grandeur of these buildings was much stronger than that of Ong Kwangtsung. The red-crowned crane landed on a plaza. The two of them jumped down. Qing Gingqing invoked his arts to keep the red-crowned crane. He said, "Follow me." After saying that, he led Yu Qianzhou to the huge building in front of the plaza. Along the way, they met many people who greeted Qing Gingqing. Yu Qianzhou saw a huge building with 3 floors from afar. On the board of the first floor, there were 3 golden words, Penglai Pavilion. After Qing Gingqing spoke to the guard at the door, he brought him into the building. Once he entered, Yu Qianzhou almost fainted. It was like entering a government office building in his previous life. Even though it was an ancient building, there was an empty main hall in the middle of the first floor. On both sides there were many smaller halls. The smaller halls also had small signs hanging on them. For example, the service office, the defense office, the secular affairs office, the miscellaneous office. The signs in the corridors on both sides were unclear. He didn't know what was written on them, but it must be somewhere else. Yu Qianzhou shook his head. If it wasn't for this antique building, he would really suspect that he had traveled back in time. He followed Qing Gingqing to the top floor of the 3rd floor and stopped in front of what seemed to be the largest room. Qing Gingqing shouted from outside, "Disciple Qing Gingqing requests an audience with the sect master." Yu Qianzhou raised his head and looked at the sign hanging above. Sure enough, it was the word sect master. He really suspected that the guy who made these things was also a time traveler. "Come in." A majestic voice came from inside. This feeling was 2F** King familiar. Yu Qianzhou felt his teeth aching. He secretly muttered, "I wonder what rank the sect master is. Governor? Mayor? Or county head?" Qing Gingqing pulled him, who was in a daze. Chapter 44. The sect master of the supporting Immortal Island, Feng Xiangtian, had already reached the middle stage of the tribulation. He had been in charge of the righteous Dao's number 1 sect, the supporting Immortal Island, for more than 100 years. At this moment he was sitting upright in the sect master's room on the top floor of Penglai Pavilion. Accompanying him were a few elders of supporting Immortal Island. The few of them were quite worried about the current situation of the cultivation world. Ong Kwang-sung had consecutively eradicated several demonic sects within a year, completely breaking the balance between the righteous and demonic sects that had been maintained for hundreds of years. His strong rise had stirred up the entire cultivation world into a state of unrest. Some of the weaker righteous sects had been repeatedly attacked by the demonic sects, and more people from the righteous and demonic sects were involved. It seems that chaos in the correction world is unavoidable. Although my supporting Immortal Island is the #1 sect of the righteous Dao, I'm afraid that we will also be implicated. We need to prepare early. Elder Fei, Elder Guan, and Elder Huang, the three of you are in charge of the 10,000 Fragrance Garden, the Alchemy Pavilion, and the Smithing Pavilion. It is very important for our sect to deal with this calamity. All kinds of elixirs and magic tools must be prepared. Once the chaos implicates our supporting Immortal Island, we must not tarnish our reputation as the #1 sect of the righteous path. I reckon that after the chaos, the entire cultivation world will be ranked again according to strength. Our sect's reputation as the #1 sect of the righteous path has been maintained for more than 1,000 years. We will not allow it to be destroyed in our generation. Feng Xiangtian had a dignified appearance to begin with. When he spoke, his eyes shone brightly as he glanced at the three elders. We will do our best, the three elders said in unison. However, when Elder Fei, who was in charge of the Myriad Fragrance Garden, said this, she seemed to lack confidence. Feng Xiangtian looked at him and asked, Elder Fei, do you have any difficulties? If there is, then don't say it now. This matter concerns the rise and fall of the sect, and we absolutely cannot be careless. Otherwise, if anything goes wrong, we will become the eternal sinners of the sect. Elder Fei looked at the two elders beside him and said with a bitter smile, there are indeed difficulties. It was true that the 10,000 Fragrance Garden was the largest spiritual herb garden in the world, but there weren't many spiritual herbs that could be used to refine high-quality pills. Not only did good spiritual herbs grow slowly, but it was also harder for them to survive. Once Elder Guan's Alchemy Pavilion increases its consumption, I'm afraid that it will really not be able to make ends meet. As soon as he finished speaking, Elder Guan, who reeked of medicine, stood up and shouted, Fei, what do you mean by that? Could it be that you want my Alchemy Pavilion to reduce the amount of spirit grass used? Don't even think about it. Elder Fei did not get angry even after being rebutted by Elder Guan. He only smiled bitterly and shook his head. Elder Guan's temper was famous in supporting Immortal Island. He didn't care about anything else and only liked to concoct pills. If someone dared to obstruct him from concocting pills, he would fight them to the death. There was no one in supporting Immortal Island who wasn't afraid of him. In the entire cultivation world, he had the title of Pill Fanatic. His alchemy skills were probably second to none. Elder Fei, who knew his temper well, did not dare to say anything else. How about this? Feng Xiangtian said, send more disciples to search for spiritual herbs. Send more people to the Myriad Fragrance Garden as well to increase the production of spiritual herbs. The sect will stop selling elixirs that are intermediate grade and above. First, ensure the elixirs in the supporting Immortal Islands inventory. In addition, I have already notified Elder Quan, who is in charge of the sect's supplies, to increase the amount of spirit stones used by all disciples below the core formation stage by 5 times, and the amount of chi storage pills used by all disciples above the core formation stage by 1 time. Elder Jean, who is in charge of the spirit stone mine, will increase the amount of spirit stones extracted. Elder Qin, who is in charge of the common goods, will send back the spirit stones obtained from the outside. The elders nodded. At this moment they heard the sound of 2 people coming up the stairs. Someone shouted from outside, Disciple Qing Gingqing is here to see the sect leader. Everyone had an impression of Qing Gingqing. He was the capable disciple of Elder Qin, who was in charge of the common goods. However, they did not know why he came to see the sect leader. Did something happen outside? Feng Xiangtian frowned and shouted, Come in. They saw Qing Gingqing leading an ordinary-looking man in. The sect leader and the 3 elders looked at him. From his clothes, they could tell that he wasn't a disciple of supporting Immortal Island. What was even stranger was that they couldn't see any cultivation from him. This person was, of course, Yu Qianchou. Disciple Qing Gingqing greets the sect leader and the 3 elders. Qing Gingqing bowed. Yu Qianchou also bowed. Itinerant cultivator Yu Qianchou greets the sect leader and the 3 elders. Qinggingqing, why are you looking for me? Feng Xiangtian said, but his eyes were still sizing up Yu Qianchou. When he heard Yu Qianchou say that he was a rogue cultivator, he almost thought that he was mistaken. The other 3 elders also showed the same doubts. Qinggingqing reached out to touch the storage bag hanging on his waist and said respectfully, reporting to Sect Master, Disciple is bringing the spirit stones back to the island, and I was ordered by Master to bring Yu Qianchou to see Sect Master. Your master asked you to bring him? Feng Xiangtian asked curiously. Qinggingqing quickly took out the supporting Immortal token and told them the purpose of Yu Qianchou's visit. After listening to him, Feng Xiangtian and the 3 elders looked at each other in dismay. The supporting Immortal token was a token that could only be obtained by those who held the position of an elder and above. It was used to show one's identity and to give the descendants of the token a chance to join the island. This rule had been established for thousands of years, and Yu Qianchou was the 3rd person to come with the token. There were originally 300 special tokens on the island. It was said that one would know a secret if they collected all 300 tokens. No one knew what the secret was, but it became a symbol of identity for those who held the position of an elder and above. As time passed, they were distributed one by one. Due to various reasons, there were less than half of the tokens left on the supporting Immortal Island. That was where the trouble came. Some people, be it in terms of cultivation qualifications or contributions, were qualified to assume the position of an elder. However, after assuming the position of an elder, they didn't have a token that represented their status as an elder. Originally, the rule was that only the descendants of the token holders could join the supporting Immortal Island. Later on, because the number of tokens had dwindled, it was changed to only recognizing the token holders and not the descendants. They were hoping that someone would give the token to them. Now that Yu Qianchou had brought this token, it would undoubtedly reduce the awkward situation of an elder being in an unjustifiable position. Feng Xiangtian took the token from Qinggingqing's hand, and after checking it carefully, he nodded slightly at the 3 elders to show that it was the real supporting Immortal token. The 3 elders couldn't hide their fiery gazes. The 3 of them were the ones who held the position of an elder but didn't have a token. Actually, it wasn't just the 3 of them who didn't have a token. When Feng Xiangtian saw the expressions of the 3 elders, his heart skipped a beat and he had a headache. This wasn't good, as something like this hadn't happened for hundreds of years. This token had to appear when he was in charge of the supporting Immortal Island. The entire supporting Immortal Island had over 200 elders, and there were over 50 elders who didn't have a token. If this token was given to any elder, it would definitely offend the other 50 elders and he would have to suffer in the future. Don't think that this was just a small supporting Immortal token, it might cause a huge commotion. To put it bluntly, it might even cause him to be kicked out of his position. That would be the first time in the history of the supporting Immortal Island to be kicked out of his position due to unfairness. Brother, what are you trying to do? Aren't you harming others by bringing this thing here? Thinking about this, Feng Xiangtian looked at Yu Qianchou and didn't know what to say. Yu Qianchou didn't know how much trouble he had brought to the number 1 sect master of the righteous path. When he saw Feng Xiangtian looking at him with malicious intent, his heart skipped a beat and he thought to himself, damn. Is this old fart going back on his words? Chapter 45. Feng Xiangtian's face was gloomy. His gaze swept between the 3 elders and Yu Qianchou from time to time. No one spoke in the room. The atmosphere suddenly became strange. Qinggingqing panicked. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. Did I do something wrong? Damn it. What are you doing? It's been almost an hour. If you don't want to accept me, just say it. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Yu Qianchou, who was standing there respectfully, was a little angry. He straightened his back. His action made Feng Xiangtian's eyes light up. He thought to himself, whoever started the trouble should untie it. The trouble was caused by this kid. It's up to him to solve it. Thinking about this, he smiled and coughed. He said to Yu Qianchou, "You're Yu Qianchou, right? That's a good name. Since you brought our sect's Immortal supporting token, we will agree to accept you. From now on, you're a disciple of our supporting Immortal Island. What's your cultivation level now? Tell me." Yu Qianchou was overjoyed. He bowed and said, Thank you, sect leader, for accepting me. Disciple Yu Qianchou is very grateful. Disciple's cultivation level is low. I've only reached level 10 Qi refinement. The 4 elders in the room stiffened. Feng Xiangtian, who couldn't see that Yu Qianchou was only level 10 Qi refinement with his tribulation middle stage cultivation level. He couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Level 10 Qi refinement. Feng Xiangtian murmured. This was a little different from his original plan, but it was better this way. He frowned and said, Yu Qianchou, there are some things I have to tell you. Although this token can let you join the supporting Immortal Island, our sect's rule is that those who fail to reach Foundation Establishment 3 times will be expelled. You haven't reached Foundation Establishment yet, so you have to follow this rule. Think about it carefully. If you regret, you can still take back this Immortal supporting token and join our sect after you break through to the Foundation Establishment stage. What Feng Xiangtian said was the truth, but there was also an element of intimidation in his words. His intention was to make Yu Qianchou back off in the face of difficulties, throw the hot Immortal supporting medallion back and enjoy the peace and quiet. When the 3 elders heard Feng Xiangtian's words, their expressions changed, but they had no reason to stop him. They all stared at Yu Qianchou to see his reaction. As expected, the latter didn't disappoint them. Yu Qianchou had already heard about these rules from Guan Yu, so he had thought about it very clearly. He immediately shook his head and said, It's my lifelong dream to be able to join the number 1 righteous sect, supporting Immortal Island. Since I'm already here, I won't regret it. That's good. Feng Xiangtian nodded and said, Immortal Yu Qianchou, that token. When a sect elder selects you as a disciple, you can hand over the token to that elder. After saying that, he spread out his palm and the token slowly flew to Yu Qianchou. After Yu Qianchou received the token, he said, Qing Gingqing, take him to register and find a place to stay. Qing Gingqing agreed and Yu Qianchou also thanked him. The 2 of them left the sect master's room. Inside the room, everyone was silent for a while. Then Elder Huang suddenly said, Sect master, I don't think we need to trouble the other elders. Why don't we let this kid join our pavilion of refining as an assistant? That's not appropriate. Elder Fei smiled. Elder Huang, sect master, also said that Wanfen Garden needs to increase the production of spiritual herbs. I think this kid is quite suitable. Let's let him join our Wanfen Garden. Bulsh *T. Elder Guan from the pavilion of refining elixir scolded. He stood up and glared at the other 2 elders. You 2 old things, don't give me that. Don't think I don't know what you're up to. There's only 1 token. If anyone wants it, it'll depend on their own ability. Otherwise, I'll be the first to object. Sect master, I'll take my leave. He turned and left. Elder Fei and Elder Huang looked at each other. They knew they couldn't afford to offend him, so they didn't say anything. After Elder Guan left, they seemed to remember something and immediately stood up to bid farewell to the sect master. Everyone in the sect master's room left in an instant. Seeing that he was the only one left, Feng Xiangtian heaved a sigh of relief. If he hadn't thought of this method, he would have been in deep trouble. Just the 3 elders were already enough to cause a ruckus, and if the 50 elders were to come at him at the same time, no, he had to inform the others as well, or else it would be troublesome. Thinking of this, Feng Xiangtian took out a piece of jade and made a finger sign on it. After muttering a few words, he crushed it in his hand and let out a sigh of relief. After Yu Qianchou and Qing Gingqing went downstairs, Qing Gingqing wiped the sweat off his forehead and said, Yu Qianchou, you're the first person the sect master has talked so much to a qi condensation disciple. I'm also benefiting from it. After I hand over the spirit stones, I'll bring you to the registration. Yu Qianchou didn't have any objections. He accompanied Qing Gingqing to quickly count and hand over the spirit stones. After that, the 2 of them went to the registration area for the new disciples. Because it was the sect master's decree, things went smoothly. After walking out of Penglai Pavilion, Qing Gingqing smiled and said, Yu Qianchou, congratulations. From today onwards, you're a disciple of Fuxian Island. It's been hard on you, Grandmaster Qing. Yu Qianchou said with a bit of sincere gratitude. As a newcomer who had just arrived and in this cold cultivation world, it was indeed a very rare thing to meet someone who spoke to you in a pleasant manner. It's just a convenience. You're welcome. Qing Gingqing waved his hand and suddenly frowned. You haven't found a master yet. I'm afraid you won't have a place to stay for the time being. Why don't you stay at my place first? You can leave with your master after we decide on an elder to be your master. Xianxia thought about it and agreed. Moreover, it was indeed more convenient to follow an acquaintance. Just as he was about to nod and agree, he suddenly heard someone laughing behind him. Then you might as well worship me as your master. You can stay at my alchemy pavilion. Xianxia turned around and saw that it was one of the elders he met just now. Before he could react, he heard Qing greet him. Elder Guan. Xianxia could only greet him. Haha. No need to be so courteous, no need to be so courteous. Elder Guan clasped his hands behind his back and stared at Xianxia with a smile. He walked around him twice as if he was looking at a treasure. The latter shuddered under his stare. He only knew that Elder Guan was an elder but did not know what he did. In addition to the smell of medicine, Xianxia could not help but think of those medical freaks who liked to experiment on human bodies. Elder Guan stopped walking around and put on a kind expression. Xianxia, is this how you want me to be your master? Xianxia did not know how to answer. He felt that something was not right. An elder of the number 1 righteous sect, Fuxian Island, was rushing to be his master? Then he looked at Qing's slightly surprised expression. There was a problem. There was definitely a problem. Haha. A hearty laughter was heard. Xianxia turned around and saw the other 2 elders walking towards him. Qing bowed again. Elder Fei, Elder Huang. Xianxia had no choice but to bow as well. Haha. The 2 elders laughed and said in unison, no need to be so polite. Elder Fei looked at Xianxia with a smile and said, Xianxia, you should be my disciple. Xianxia, I have the same intention. Follow me. Elder Huang said. Ah. Xianxia and Qing were stunned at the same time. Elder Guan's face turned from sunny to gloomy. He looked terrible. Chapter 46. Who is Xianxia? A silhouette descended from the sky and landed in front of them. The newcomer's gaze swept across them before finally landing on Xianxia, who was dressed differently from the rest. He asked, You are Xianxia? Xianxia nodded. Before he could say anything, the person said impatiently, Come with me. I will take you as my disciple. Bullshit. Elder Guan stood in front of Xianxia. Elder Fei and Elder Huang also stood in front of the person. Elder Fei chuckled and said, Elder Lu, when did you learn to rob? Qing and Xianxia were dumbfounded. They didn't know what these people were trying to do. Elder Lu, who had just arrived, said disapprovingly, Old Fei, what are you saying? Xianxia hasn't acknowledged anyone as his master yet. He will naturally follow whoever he wishes to acknowledge as his master. How am I a robber? I like what Elder Lu said. Another silhouette landed in front of the crowd. Before the newcomer could steady himself, he saw dozens of silhouettes descending from all directions. People kept asking, Who is Xianxia? It was obvious that the group of elders were here for Xianxia. Qing looked at Xianxia suspiciously. He really couldn't see what was so good about him that so many elders were fighting for him. However, he didn't know that Xianxia shuddered. He thought of a fairy tale in his previous life. There was a monk named Tang Seng. It was said that eating his meat could make one immortal. Could it be that my meat has the same effect? Xianxia's divine sense immediately locked on the golden pearl in his dantian. If he found anything wrong, he would leave immediately. The window of the sect leader's room on the 3rd floor of Pinglai Pavilion was open. Sect leader Feng Xiangtian looked at the group of elders below and shook his head with a wry smile. Once again he felt that he had made the wisest decision. When the surrounding disciples saw so many elders gathered together, they didn't know what was going on. They wanted to go over and take a look, but they didn't dare to. Not long after, there was a large crowd of disciples surrounding them, and there were even more who heard the commotion and came over to watch. No matter how courageous Xianxia was, he couldn't help but sweat beads on his forehead when being stared at by a group of old fellows who had lived for at least 200 years. This kind of pressure was too great. Xianxia felt his throat was a little dry. He swallowed his saliva and bowed to everyone. Disciple Xianxia greets the elders. There's no need to be so polite. The elders replied one after another. Everyone's tone was as if they were Xianxia's master. Xianxia smiled awkwardly at everyone. Oh my God. What kind of background does this Yu Qianzhou have? So many elders have to give him face. Qing Gingqing also felt the huge pressure. He couldn't help but wipe the beads of sweat off his forehead. He looked around and realized that he was surrounded by elders. There was no way out even if he wanted to. All the elders had gathered and everyone was well aware of what each of them was thinking. Everyone was silent for a moment. Elder Lu, who had just arrived, swept his gaze across everyone and said in a deep voice, "Everyone standing here isn't a solution. There is only one immortal supporting token. The sect leader has said that whoever accepts Yu Qianzhou as a disciple will be qualified to receive the immortal supporting token. Since the sect leader has said so, we will naturally comply. Now it seems like all the elders want to accept Yu Qianzhou as a disciple. However, there is only one Yu Qianzhou and one immortal supporting token. We can't possibly fight over it. Don't dawdle. If you have something to say, say it," Elder Guan said impatiently. Elder Lu rolled his eyes. Just as he wanted to retort, he realized that not many people could afford to offend this crazy old man. Who knew when he would have to ask him to concoct pills for him? He could only shut his mouth. If it was someone else, he would definitely say, "If you don't want to wait, you can leave first. No one is stopping you here." Damn it. That scared me. So they are all here for the immortal supporting token in my hands. Yu Qianzhou finally heaved a sigh of relief. Qing Gingqing also understood that his master Elder Qin had an immortal supporting token. It was no wonder that Elder Qin had asked him to send Yu Qianzhou to Immortal Supporting Island. If his master didn't have it, he would have gotten it first. Then Yu Qianzhou wouldn't have called him Ancestor Master. He would have called him Senior Brother. Qing Gingqing finally understood why his master had smiled so strangely. He knew that there would be a show to watch. "Elder Lu, we are all from the same sect. It would be a joke if we fought over a token. If you have any ideas, just say them. Everyone, let's hear it and see if it works," one of the elders said. "That's right. Elder Lu, why don't you say it first?" Many of the elders agreed. Elder Lu looked at Elder Guan with a pleased expression. Unfortunately, Elder Guan only rolled his eyes at him. He could only smile and say, "Actually, it's very simple. Let Yu Qianzhou choose. He can follow whoever he wants to be his disciple. The immortal support token will naturally belong to that person. What do all the elders think about this? If you agree, why don't you all be witnesses in case someone goes back on his words?" When he said the last sentence, his eyes were fixed on Elder Guan. The meaning behind his words was clear. Elder Guan glared back and patted his chest. Whoever goes back on his words is a grandson. All the elders felt that this was a good idea. Let's not fight over it. Let Yu Qianzhou choose himself. Whoever he chooses will be lucky. Hence they all agreed. In an instant, the tense atmosphere disappeared. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Yu Qianzhou. Elder Lu said to him, "Yu Qianzhou, you heard everyone's words. You can find whoever you think is suitable to be your master. No one is forcing you. Don't worry and don't be afraid." Qing Gingqing glanced at the fiery gazes around him. He looked at Yu Qianzhou with sympathy. He thought to himself that no one was easy to choose. This matter offended too many people, and not just any ordinary person but all the elders. What's there to be afraid of? Yu Qianzhou, who was bowing respectfully to the elders, gradually straightened his back. He glanced at the sect leader at the window on the third floor of the Penglai Pavilion. Now he understood why the sect leader tried so hard to return the fairy supporting token to him. He knew that there would be trouble. The elders looked at him with kindness, dignity, and love. In short, all of their gazes conveyed the same message. "I am the master you should choose." Yu Qianzhou felt his scalp tingling. Elder Guan's eyes were clearly threatening him. It was as if he was telling him, "Young man, if you don't choose me as your master, I will teach you a lesson." What is going on? I am new here. I can't afford to offend any of them. Yu Qianzhou looked at the sect leader at the window again. Feng Xiangtian seemed to have seen his pleading eyes. He disappeared behind the window and muttered with a bitter smile, "Young man, don't blame me. It is better for you to offend them than me." Damn. Why did I go in the opposite direction? They are begging me. Why should I be afraid? Yu Qianzhou suddenly realized what was going on when he saw the expectation hidden in the elders' expressions. Chapter 47. Thinking about this, he nervously said, "This disciple has just arrived and doesn't know much about the elders. How about?" The elders' eyes lit up, but they didn't hear anything else. Elder Lu smiled and said, "Just say what you want to say, no one will blame you." When he said this, his smile was very kind. Xianxia saw that the elders nodded, so he put on an awkward expression and said hesitantly, "I don't know what abilities the elders have, but I want to pick one that suits me." As he said this, his voice became very low. As soon as he said that, the elders who had gathered together immediately became lively and introduced their own abilities one after another. A group of disciples gathered outside didn't know what the elders were doing. It felt like they were selling things in a market. The disciples all looked at each other. This elder's cultivation has reached the early stage of tribulation passing. It's not a problem for me to be the master of a little child like you. There are a few who haven't reached tribulation passing. It would be a pity if I don't find a disciple to inherit my extraordinary spells. How many people below the nascent soul stage can use that spell of yours? Xianxia, come to my refining pavilion. I'll refine a few high-quality magic tools for you to defend yourself. It'll be very worth it. Xianxia appeared to be very respectful on the surface, but when he heard the elders boasting without regard for their status, his heart was filled with joy. These elders might be famous people in the cultivation world, but when they were gathered together, they were no different from mortals. This was probably the case of rare things being expensive. If there were too many of them, they would naturally depreciate. After listening respectfully for a long time, he didn't find many people with special abilities. Everyone talked about how high their cultivation was, how powerful their magic treasures were, and how many demonic cultivators they had killed. But this wasn't what he wanted. No matter how high their cultivation was, it didn't matter to him. Cultivation couldn't be transferred to him. So what if a magic treasure was powerful? He didn't even have the strength to fly on a sword. Even if a magic treasure was given to him, he wouldn't be able to use it. And those people who were proud of killing people were simply perverts. Don't they know that what I want the most is someone who can help me reach foundation establishment? Speaking up to here, Xianxia himself was not very clear. At present, in the cultivation world, there was probably no one who would dare to say that they would be able to help someone successfully reach the foundation building realm. At best, they could only say that they would give you a few foundation building pills or give you some guidance during the foundation building realm, or provide you with some foundation building experience. Furthermore, the conditions of Fuxian Island's disciples were much better than those of other sections. Although foundation establishment pills were quite precious, every disciple had 3 chances to reach foundation establishment. On the contrary, it was harsher than other sections. Those who failed 3 times would definitely be chased out of the supporting Immortal Island because such disciples had almost no future in terms of cultivation. Therefore, there was no elder who dared to say that they would definitely help you reach foundation establishment. As long as someone dared to say that, they would immediately be ridiculed by others. No matter how he listened, only the words of the 3 elders Fei, Guan and Huang, that he had seen in the sect master's room, moved Xianxia a little. Elder Fei was in charge of the myriad fragrance garden. Some of the spiritual herbs in the garden were priceless treasures. If Elder Fei were to become his disciple, he would be able to obtain the spiritual herbs on the pill recipe Jade Archive. Elder Guan was in charge of the elixir refinery pavilion, which could refine all kinds of medicinal pills. What attracted Xianxia the most was that almost all the foundation establishment pills in the new Excellence Assembly were refined by Elder Guan's elixir refinery pavilion. Elder Huang's elixir refinery pavilion was famous throughout the cultivation world. The transcendent artifacts refined by them were even heard of in Kuang-Tsung. A good transcendent artifact was no less valuable than a cultivator's life. Xianxia had personally witnessed the might of transcendent artifacts in the Spirit Stone mine in Kuang-Tsung. It was much more powerful than when he used a saber to slash people. He was still shocked to this day. He had already preliminarily determined that the master he wanted to choose would be one of these 3. However, in order to survive in the cultivation world in the future, he had no choice but to consider it carefully. The biggest obstacle he was currently facing was breaking through to the foundation establishment stage. If he couldn't break through to the foundation establishment stage, everything else was just empty talk. Although there were many spiritual herbs in Elder Fei's myriad fragrance garden, he didn't know how to refine pills. What was the point of becoming his disciple? Did he have to eat spiritual herbs like rice? Or steal spiritual herbs to exchange for money? The lifespan of a qi refining stage cultivator wasn't that long. If he died, would they all become his inheritance? Even if they were to become his inheritance, he should at least have a purpose. If he couldn't break through to the foundation establishment stage, what was the point of having so many spiritual herbs and so much money? If he had already reached the foundation establishment stage, Elder Huang's elixir refinery pavilion would be a good choice. It would be great if he could obtain a few more transcendent artifacts. However, it was a little unrealistic to go there now. He couldn't use the transcendent artifacts anyway. No matter how many he obtained, they would only become his inheritance. It seemed that Elder Guan was the best choice. As long as he learned the skill of refining pills, even if he failed to build his foundation and was chased out of Fuxian Island, he would still have the skill to rely on. At most, he could slowly gather spiritual herbs in the future and refine his own damn foundation establishment pills. He didn't believe that eating foundation establishment pills like rice could not help him break through to the foundation establishment stage. Moreover, looking at this old fellow's arrogant appearance, it seemed that everyone was a little afraid of him. From this point, it could be seen that refining pills was a good profession. Secondly, he wouldn't have to be afraid of offending others if he became his disciple. The old fellow's arrogant appearance should be able to support him. Moreover, he had a straightforward temper, so it shouldn't be difficult to deal with him. Thinking of this, Xianxia made up his mind. He turned a deaf ear to the buzzing of the elders. His expression was resolute, and his resolute gaze landed on Elder Guan, who was spitting saliva at the other elders. Everyone noticed Xianxia's reaction and knew that he was about to make a choice. They all stopped talking. Some of the elders even revealed expressions of anticipation. All of this is King Bolsh *. Standing in front of Xianxia with his back facing him, Elder Guan was cursing to his heart's content. Suddenly he noticed everyone's reaction. Turning around, he saw Xianxia looking at him. At this moment, the world-famous Dan addict couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Who the token would belong to depended on Xianxia's words. Xianxia took a step forward and bowed to Elder Guan. Disciple Xianxia sincerely begs Elder Guan to accept me as a disciple. Saying this, he knelt down. Immediately, the elders who had been arguing for a long time were all dumbfounded. All kinds of sorrowful and regretful expressions appeared on their faces. Elder Guan was startled as if he didn't believe it. But then he reacted and laughed loudly. Good. Xianxia, this old man agrees to accept you as a disciple. Get up, no need to be so courteous. Saying this, he personally helped Xianxia up. His complacent laughter spread in all directions, as if he was even happier than when he concocted a peerless divine pill. Xianxia, who was the closest to him, felt his ears go numb from the sound of his laughter. Qing, who was standing to the side, had finally seen it for himself. Normally, these dignified elders would actually say anything for a token. He couldn't help but admire Xianxia's courage. If he had encountered such a situation, he probably wouldn't have known what to do. However, he didn't know if there would be any negative consequences. Thinking about this, he sneaked a peek at the elders' reactions. Sure enough, their expressions didn't look good. Everyone, why are you still crowding around here? Could it be that you want to congratulate me? This old man appreciates your kind intentions. Everyone, please make way for me. I'm going to bring my new disciple back to the Alchemy Pavilion. Elder Guan held on to Xianxia's wrist and laughed. He was too happy today. Not mentioning the fact that he didn't get the Immortal supporting token, just being able to stand out from the dozens of elders was enough to make him happy. Especially when he saw the expressions on everyone's faces as if they had swallowed a fly. Chapter 48. Xianxia had already become someone else's disciple. Naturally, the Immortal supporting medallion had also become someone else's. This was agreed upon by everyone. No matter how unwilling they were, what else could they say? Elder Lu, who proposed this idea, saw Elder Guan's smug expression. He snorted coldly and flew away first. None of the elders were willing to look at Elder Guan's face anymore. They flew away one after another. In an instant, all the elders left. Xianxia looked at the disciples who were watching from afar. Many of them were disciples of these elders. Xianxia felt that it was not a wise choice to stay with Elder Guan. He immediately bowed and said, "Elder Guan, this disciple will also take his leave." After Elder Guan happily nodded his head, he bid farewell to Yu Qianzhou and left. The disciples who were watching didn't know what had happened. Some of them recognized Xianxia and walked towards him. The others scattered in twos and threes. Yu Qianzhou saw Elder Guan's smug expression. He was speechless. He took out the medallion and presented it with both hands. "Master, the sect leader has instructed me to hand over the Immortal supporting medallion after I become his disciple." Good. The sect leader has always been fair. I will obey his orders." Elder Guan took the medallion with a smile. He looked at it carefully in his hand before throwing it into his storage bag. He didn't have the passion he had when he snatched it. Then he led Yu Qianzhou back with satisfaction. The two of them answered each other's questions along the way. Yu Qianzhou, who was almost confused by the difference in seniority, finally solved his doubts. Just now when he bade farewell to Xianxia he called him Grandmaster Qing. Now when he called Elder Guan he had to call him Master. He had lowered Elder Guan's seniority for no reason. Yu Qianzhou almost couldn't call him that. Now he understood that Martial Uncle and Master were just honorifics for people who had reached a certain level of cultivation. They didn't mean anything about seniority. In supporting Immortal Island, other than the master who taught you, there was no such thing as seniority. As long as your cultivation surpassed others, others would have to address you as Martial Uncle or Martial Ancestor. This was a very normal thing. Yu Qianzhou sighed endlessly with emotion. Don't be fooled by the messy name of the island of supporting immortals. It imperceptibly contained a competitive mechanism, and it had the meaning of the capable rising up and the incapable falling down. In addition, there was a rule that those who failed to reach the Foundation Establishment realm 3 times would be expelled from supporting Immortal Island. It was a complete elimination system. Even if those who remained were not geniuses, they were elites. It was no wonder that supporting Immortal Island had its current status in the cultivation world. From today onwards he will be a disciple of supporting Immortal Island's Pill Refinement Pavilion. Elder Guan's full name was Guan Weiwu. After knowing his name, Yu Qianzhou felt a toothache. This name was indeed impressive. It was similar to Guan Yu's name in his golden bead. It seemed that he and Guan Weiwu were fated. This newly acknowledged master was indeed impatient. After leading him for a while he lost his patience. After pointing out the location of the Pill Refinement Pavilion, he turned into a stream of light and flew towards the mountain peak in front of him. Yu Qianzhou had long heard of the Pill Refinement Pavilion's fame in the cultivation world. It was built on the highest mountain range of supporting Immortal Island. At the very top there was a huge hall. When he was halfway up the mountain he smelled a rich medicinal fragrance. After taking a few more breaths he immediately felt refreshed. The mountain peak was barren and there was no trace of green. It was completely different from the lush greenery below the halfway up the mountain. Generally speaking, the higher the terrain, the lower the temperature. The strange thing was that the higher one went up the mountain, the higher the temperature. It was like the bottom of the mountain and the top of the mountain were two different seasons. Although Yu Qianzhou's cultivation wasn't high, this little difference in temperature didn't affect him. He just felt that it was strange. Why was there such a strange phenomenon? Could it be because of the fire on the mountain peak? After walking up the stone steps to the top of the mountain he saw a white stone archway in front of him. The 3 words Pill Refinement Pavilion were written on it. Behind the archway was a huge ancient building complex. Between the archway and the building complex was a field paved with blue stone. There were many people on the ground looking for all kinds of herbs. They must be spirit herbs used for alchemy. Yu Qianzhou turned back to look at the bottom of the mountain. He looked at the buildings on the mountain peak that were much shorter. This was probably the territory of other elders like his master. This made him a little puzzled. What he couldn't understand was that according to his understanding of this world, the higher the status of a person, the higher the place they lived. His master didn't have the highest status on supporting Immortal Island. At the very least there was a sect master above him. How could he live in the highest place? As his thoughts ran wild, someone behind him asked, "Are you Yu Qianzhou?" "That's right." Yu Qianzhou turned around and replied. Below the archway stood a tall, skinny man with a cold face. His eyes revealed a trace of unfriendliness as he looked at Yi Shiwen. The man snorted and said, "Are you the new disciple that Elder Guan said was accepted?" "I don't think you are very good. Come with me." After saying that, he showed his butt to Yu Qianchou. Yu Qianchou was a little angry. Who did he think he was? What did I do to provoke you? The moment you come, you give me eye medicine. Although he really wanted to kick the butt in front of him, he could still tell how heavy it was. It wasn't the right time to do so. He could only obediently follow behind the middle-aged man and stare at his butt. His originally good mood instantly became very gloomy. The middle-aged man led him to a courtyard. He pointed to a room and said, "From today on you will live here. Cultivate with the disciples here. Do whatever they do. Remember what I said. Don't think you can do whatever you want just because you are Elder Guan's disciple." After saying that, he snorted and said, "I heard you are a wandering cultivator from outside the island. You are only level 10 Qi training, am I right?" No. Yu Qianchou said respectfully, "What should I call you?" The middle-aged man glanced at him and said arrogantly, "Late-stage core formation. According to the rules of Fuxian Island, you should call me Ancestor." "Oh, so it's Ancestor Yan." Disciple Yu Qianchou greets Ancestor Yan. Yu Qianchou bowed and thought, there are all kinds of birds in a big forest. I've never seen such a crazy person. Yanshu, I will remember you. I will repay you in the future. Yanshu snorted. Calling him Ancestor twice seemed to make him feel better. Then he said, "Fuxian Island has a rule. Disciples who haven't reached the foundation establishment stage are not allowed to wander around on the island. You just stay here and don't run around. When your fellow disciples finish their business and come back, you can ask them if you have anything you don't understand. Do you remember what I said?" Yu Qianchou smiled respectfully. "I won't forget Ancestor Yan's words. Disciple will remember them." "Good." Yan Shu left the smiling Yu Qianchou and walked out of the courtyard with his hands behind his back. Someone shouted, "Ancestor Yan, have a safe trip." Chapter 49. After watching Yan Shu leave until he disappeared, Yu Qianchou straightened his slightly bent waist. The flattering expression on his face turned into contemplation. His strength was too weak. Ever since he entered the cultivation world, anyone with a little bit of strength would be able to pinch him. Yet he still had to act like a tortoise. All of this was because he was too weak. A certain great man said it well. If you fall behind, you'll be beaten. This is really a wise saying. This world was too crazy. The cultivation circle regarded human lives as worthless. His little life could be taken away at any time. The golden bead was a safe place. Did he have to hide in the golden bead for the rest of his life just because it was dangerous? But what about Chu Pinger, who is waiting for me in Ongquang-tsung? Can I get her out without strength? Even if I get her out, do I have to let her hide with me in the golden pearl forever? No. Even if she's willing, I can't let her hide with me forever. How can I let a woman who treats me sincerely suffer for the rest of her life? Thinking of this, Yu Qianchou smiled bitterly and shook his head. He muttered, "As long as I can increase my strength, I don't care if I'm a good person or a bad person. Even if I have to become the enemy of the entire cultivation world, I don't care. Pinga, when I really become notorious, I hope you can understand. Because of you, from today onwards, my conscience will be eaten by dogs." After a firm belief was established in his heart, Yu Qianchou let out a long breath. It's not that I don't want to be a good person, but I don't have the conditions to be a good person. What's more important than living? There's a saying in my previous life: if you're poor, take care of yourself. If you're rich, take care of the world. After walking around the small courtyard twice, he didn't find anyone here. He guessed that they went out to do something and probably wouldn't come back for a while. Pushing open the room that Yan Shu designated for him, there was almost nothing inside. There was a table, a chair, and a bed. There was nothing else. Since he was bored, he closed the door and disappeared from the room, returning to the Golden Pearl's space. The young cultivator who was hugging a spirit stone and absorbing it was the person he kidnapped from 100 Flower Valley. Yu Qianchou looked at him and smiled. "What's your name?" Hearing someone speak, the young cultivator sitting cross-legged slowly opened his eyes. When he saw Yu Qianchou standing in front of him, his expression immediately changed. He jumped up and shouted, "You thief, let me out." With that, he charged at Yu Qianchou as if he was going to fight to the death. Yu Qianchou smiled and shook his head. Within the golden bead world, he was the one in charge. Probably no one could do anything to him. Even the white fox could only stare at him helplessly, let alone this young cultivator with a shallow cultivation. Just as he was about to dodge, the young cultivator who was rushing forward suddenly screamed. He held his head with both hands and fell down, rolling on the ground in pain. Yu Qianchou was stunned for a moment before he understood what was going on. He had seen this phenomenon on Guan Yu before. It was the sign of being controlled by someone after their natal Yuanshan was forcefully extracted. In the golden bead space, only the white fox could do this. Closing his eyes to sense the golden bead world, the location of the white fox in Guan Yu appeared in his mind. Yu Qianchou's figure disappeared and reappeared in the white fox's garden. Seeing Guan Yu holding a bag and taking out a handful of seeds to sow on the plowed land with the white fox guiding him, Yu Qianchou couldn't help but laugh. Guan Yu was really lucky to have such a beauty accompanying him to farm. "Sister, are you planting flowers again?" Yu Qianchou smiled. The white fox didn't even raise her head. Instead, Guan Yu stopped what he was doing and said, "Yo, boss Yu is here. Did supporting Immortal Island accept you?" The white fox probably didn't like his nagging, so she glared at him. Guan Yu smiled embarrassedly and took out the seeds to continue planting his flowers. Then she looked at Yu Qianchou and frowned. "You joined supporting Immortal Island again?" From her tone, it seemed that she didn't like people who joined other sections. Heh. Yes. Yu Qianchou originally wanted to ask Guan Yu about supporting Immortal Island, but he heard the unhappiness in the white fox's words. He changed the topic and said, "Sister, you guys go on with your work. I still have something to do." Before the white fox could say anything, he disappeared and reappeared in front of the young cultivator. The young cultivator was sitting on the ground with a pale face. Yu Qianchou asked again, "What's your name?" The young cultivator replied dispiritedly, "Qin Feng." Yu Qianchou said with a smile, "Qin Feng, how many spirit stones can you earn by setting up a stall in a day? Look behind you, there are so many spirit stones that you can't use up. Use them however you want. Don't be half dead, get yourself together. Isn't it just having your natal primordial spirit taken away? You will get used to it after a long time. If you don't believe me, you can go to the flower garden over there. There is a guy called Guan Yu there, and his natal primordial spirit was taken away just like you. Look at how comfortable he is now, he has beauties to plant flowers with him every day." Hearing the word beauties, Qin Feng shuddered. He remembered the day he came in. When he was making a fuss, a woman as beautiful as a fairy suddenly appeared. He had never seen such a beautiful woman before, and he couldn't help but be mesmerized. Who knew that the woman would grab his head without saying a word and take away his natal primordial spirit? The pain that came from the soul made people shudder. Seeing that he was still in a daze, Yu Qianchou touched his nose and said with a smile, "Don't think too much. From the day you came in, you were destined to follow me. There are only benefits to following me. If you have time, improve your family's talisman-making skills. Who knows, I might need it someday. If you need any materials, let me know the next time I come. I'm very busy, so I won't talk anymore. Think about it." After saying that, he disappeared, leaving the absent-minded Qin Feng still sitting on the ground. It was unknown whether he had heard what was said or not. Just as he returned to his room, he heard someone approaching from outside the courtyard. He opened the door and went out. There were 3 young people walking in. When the 3 saw Yu Qianchou, they were stunned. After looking at each other, one of them opened his mouth and asked, "You are Yu Qianchou?" "That's right." Yu Qianchou was a little surprised. He asked, "How does this fellow Daoist know my name? I wonder who these 3 fellow Daoists are." "Haha. So you really are Yu Qianchou. Your name has spread all over Fuxian Island today. A Fuxian order almost caused a dozen elders to fight. I heard you are also level 10 Qi refinement and have Elder Guan as your master. I guessed you would also be assigned to our courtyard." "Huh. The 3 of us are also level 10 Qi refinement. My name is Ling Feng." He then introduced the people on his left and right. "This is Beizi and he is Xian Ping. So it's 3 senior brothers." Yu Qianchou bowed, but in his heart he was wondering why these 3 people's names felt so weird. Ling Feng laughed brightly. "I don't dare to call you senior brother. Putting aside the fact that you are Elder Guan's disciple, the three of us can't see through your cultivation. I'm afraid we will have to call you senior brother. That's right. Beizi on the left agreed. Normal people don't have the chance to enter our courtyard. Since we are here, we are brothers. Xianping, can you share the good wine you've hidden with everyone? Okay. Xianping said expressionlessly. Yu Qianzhou was slightly startled. He thought that Xianping didn't want to take the wine, so he quickly smiled. No need to trouble Brother Xian. I have wine here. I promise you three can drink to your heart's content. As he said this, he reached into his storage pouch. When he was at the pillar of the general's residence, Shi Shaoan gave him a lot of good wine. Wait. Xianping shouted and coldly said, You are the guest. He then walked towards a room. The meaning behind his words was that you are the guest, and there is no reason for a guest to greet the host. Yu Qianzhou's hand froze. He didn't know what to do. Ling Feng smiled. Brother, you don't mind him. Xianping always speaks like this. You will know after spending a long time with him that he is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. His words are harsh, but he doesn't mean any harm. Yu Qianzhou felt relieved, but Beizi stared at the storage pouch on his waist. She clicked her tongue. Brother, you actually has a storage pouch. I have been on Fuxian Island for so many years, but I don't think I have seen a qi condensation cultivator with such a thing. This is good. I'm afraid it can't be bought with even a top-grade spirit stone, right? Ling Feng's eyes were filled with envy. Xianping, who came out with a big jar of wine, also said, Good stuff. Since you like it, I will ask Master Qing Gingqing to bring 3 for you the next time I meet him. Yu Qianzhou was often a stingy person, but he was always generous when it came to making friends. Ling Feng and Beizi looked at each other and smiled. They didn't take his words seriously. They both thought that he was just being perfunctory, but they didn't point it out. For qi condensation cultivators, storage pouches weren't something they could casually give away. Yu Qianzhou saw their expressions, but he didn't say anything. Some things didn't need to be explained. Actions were the most convincing. Besides, 3 storage pouches were nothing to him. Xianping simply said, Drink. Chapter 50. The few of them sat around the stone table. After a few bowls of wine, the atmosphere changed. The 4 of them were less courteous and more straightforward. After some small talk, Yu Qianzhou had a rough understanding of the 3 of them. He could tell that Ling Feng and Beizi were candid and straightforward. They were passionate people, which was rare in the cultivation world. As for Xianping, he was a man of few words, but one sentence could make people choke. The 3 of them had good characters. Yu Qianzhou felt that the 3 of them were worth befriending. Besides, it wasn't a bad thing to make a few friends in an unfamiliar place. However, characters were rare in the cultivation world. Moreover, he met 3 of them at once. Yu Qianzhou had to ask in a roundabout way. It turned out that there was no other reason other than the fact that the 3 of them did not know how to conduct themselves. To put it bluntly, it was because the 3 of them did not know how to follow the waves and flatter the people in charge. Thus, the 3 of them were chased together. Usually, they would only do rough and menial work that no one was willing to do. It could also be said that the 3 of them would rather break than bend the knee and cause trouble. Unfortunately, the 3 of them didn't have a good aptitude. They had failed to build their foundation once. If they failed a second time, they would be chased out of Fuxian Island. Yu Qianzhou was dumbfounded. What was the meaning of him being sent here? Why was he put together with 3 people who had no future? Was Guan Weiwu going to burn the bridge after crossing it? Was he going to ignore him after getting the Immortal supporting token? Ling Feng seemed to see through his depression. He drank the wine in his bowl and smiled. You were brought here by Yen Shu. I'm afraid there are some things you don't know. Yen Shu's father was Elder Yen Tuo, who was in charge of the miscellaneous matters of Fuxian Island. When Yen Shu joined the Elixir Refinery Pavilion, he used his father's name to ask Elder Guan to be his master. In the end, Elder Guan didn't give him any face. He rejected him on the spot and gave him a random master. Yen Shu was a narrow-minded person, a real villain. At that time he was furious, but he couldn't do anything to Elder Guan. Afterwards, when Elder Guan was in his prime, he accepted a few disciples, but without exception, all of them were killed by Yen Shu. Ugh! Yu Qianzhou almost spat out the wine in his mouth. After he managed to swallow it down, he heard Beizi chuckle and say, Brother Yu, are you scared? You are also Elder Guan's disciple. I hope you're the exception. Yu Qianzhou put down his wine bowl and looked at the three of them in astonishment. It can't be that exaggerated, right? Yan Shu killed Elder Guan's future disciple just because Elder Guan didn't accept him as a disciple? It can't be faked. Xian Ping, who was immersed in his wine, concluded. Although he didn't speak much, his words were more useful than Ling Feng and Bei Zi's explanations. Yu Qianzhou completely dispelled the suspicion in his heart. He asked reluctantly, could it be that Elder Guan doesn't even care about his own disciple being killed? Bei Zi chuckled again. Haven't you heard of Elder Guan's nickname, Pill Addict? Other than alchemy, I don't think there's anything else he cares about. He even forgot about the disciple he accepted today the next day. Do you think a master like this can be relied on? Xian Ping, who was pouring wine, shook his head and said, he can't be relied on. Yu Qianzhou was speechless. There was such a muddle-headed master. Why did he have to meet him? He hated himself for being blind. Why did he choose Elder Guan as his master? Damn it. My life is even more bitter than a cabbage. Ling Feng grabbed the wine jar next to Xian Ping and filled Yu Qianzhou's bowl with wine. She said, if it wasn't for his father's prestige and the fact that there are so many nascent soul cultivators, how could a core formation cultivator like Yan Shu be the caretaker of the Alchemy Pavilion? However, since he sent you to our courtyard, it seems like he does have the intention to harm you. Although that's the case, you don't have to worry too much. The rules of Fuxian Island aren't just for show. He won't dare to harm you openly. As long as you're vigilant, it won't be easy for him to harm you. Yu Qianzhou nodded and didn't say anything. A fierce look flashed through his eyes. No one noticed that he already had the intention to kill Yan Shu. Although he didn't know if the Yan Shu mentioned by the three of them was really so unbearable, if he really had to live in fear every day, then there was no need to think about it. It wasn't the first time he did something like this. However, in order to succeed in building his foundation, he still had to endure it. It was hard to find a sect with such good conditions. Moreover, what he heard was only a one-sided story from the three of them. Some things were better to see with one's own eyes. Thinking about this, Yu Qianzhou cupped his hands and smiled. Thank you, three brothers, for your reminder. I'll remember it. This is the first time we've met, so let's not talk about this disappointing thing. Everyone says that Fuxian Island is a blessed land. I haven't seen the beautiful scenery here. I wonder if the three brothers can take me there to see it? Xian Ping shook his head. No. Yu Qianzhou was startled. Why? Didn't Yan Shu tell you that disciples under the foundation establishment stage can't wander around without permission? Ling Feng asked curiously. The other two also looked at him. Yu Qianzhou thought that Yan Shu really did tell him such a rule. At that time he thought that Yan Shu was just scaring a newcomer like him, so he didn't take it to heart. Now it seemed that it was true. He couldn't help but ask, is there really such a rule? Why is that? It's very simple. Ling Feng said, only disciples above the foundation establishment stage can be considered as true disciples of Fuxian Island. They can enter any place on Fuxian Island that doesn't have any restrictions. This includes going to the scripture depository to read all kinds of cultivation books that can be made public in the sect. Secondly, every sect has secrets that they don't want outsiders to know. Fuxian Island is no exception. The most important thing is that disciples who fail to build their foundation 3 times will be expelled from the sect. Brother Yu, now you should understand why disciples under the foundation establishment stage can't wander around without permission, right? I understand. They're afraid that those expelled disciples will leak the secrets of the Fuxian Island. Yu Qianzhou frowned. In other words, disciples who haven't reached the foundation establishment stage like us aren't considered true disciples of Fuxian Island. Ling Feng stood up and patted his shoulder with a smile. Brother, you don't take it too hard. In the entire cultivation world, which sect's disciple is like Fuxian Island that has 3 chances to obtain the foundation establishment pill? I'm afraid there's no other sect other than Fuxian Island. Just this alone is enough to make other sects' disciples envious. As far as I know, some sects' disciples don't even have the chance to get a foundation establishment pill in their entire lives. Yes. Bei Zi nodded. I've thought it through. If I fail 3 times and get kicked out of Fuxian Island, I have nothing to say. The chances are the same. I can only blame myself for being inferior. Me too. The taciturn Xian Ping also agreed. They had misunderstood. It wasn't that Yu Qianzhou couldn't get over it, it was that Guan Yu was too dishonest. He didn't even tell him these basic things, causing him to be in the dark and keep asking idiotic questions. It was obvious that Guan Yu had a problem with his mentality, and he was deliberately trying to embarrass him. As for whether he was a true disciple of Fuxian Island, it wasn't important to him. As long as he built his foundation, everything was fine. Moreover, he had a trump card that could solve all his troubles. Thinking about this, Yu Qianzhou smiled. Wasn't Guan Weiwu the most powerful in the elixir refinery pavilion? Wasn't Guan Weiwu an elixir fanatic? I don't believe that the elixir recipe of an elixir ancestor can't deal with you. Chapter 51. He thought about how he had never looked at the pill formula in detail. Without a basic understanding of it, he reckoned that he wouldn't be able to fool Guan Weiwu even if he wanted to. With this thought in mind, he couldn't bring himself to drink anymore. Yu Qianzhou raised his head and drained the wine in his bowl. He put down the bowl, stood up and apologized to the three. I'm not feeling well. I'll go back and rest first. Next time I'll treat you all to a good drink. With that, he hurriedly turned around and left. The three of them stared at him in shock as he entered his room and closed the door. Ling Feng quietly said, "It looks like he's still taking things too hard." "It's nothing. He'll be able to accept it after some time," Beizi said. Xian Ping, who had been drinking silently, turned his head to look at the closed door. He suddenly said, "Not necessarily." Then he continued drinking. Ling Feng and Beizi looked at each other, unsure of what he meant by that. The moment Yu Qianzhou closed the door, he immediately disappeared from the room. He urgently wanted to find the White Fox, hoping that she could help him remove the restrictions on the Jade Archive. Among the people he knew, the White Fox was probably the only one who had that ability. Who else could he look for but her? She was able to set up a formation with just a few spirit stones, so she must have a certain understanding of formations and restrictions. Returning to the Golden Pearl, he used his divine sense to investigate and confirmed the White Fox's location. With a thought, he appeared outside the White Fox's garden in the blink of an eye. There was now another capable assistant in the flower bed. Qin Feng seemed to have thought things through and was busy farming with Guan Yu. Seeing Yu Qianzhou's arrival, the former glanced at him before lowering his head and disappearing. He snorted coldly to express his dissatisfaction, while the latter happily nodded and smiled in greeting. Yu Qianzhou wasn't in the mood to pay attention to the two of them. He affectionately called out to the White Fox, "Sister," and walked over. The White Fox's peerless beauty, coupled with her white robe, stood among the green leaves and fresh flowers. It was very pleasing to the eye. She frowned slightly and said, "Why are you so diligent today? You haven't even been out for a day, right?" Yu Qianzhou smiled in embarrassment. He naturally couldn't directly say that he had something he needed her help with. However, he was also thick-skinned and could easily flatter her. Who told Big Sister to have a beauty that could captivate even the birds and beasts? A beauty that could outshine the moon and put flowers to shame. I missed Big Sister, so I couldn't wait to see beautiful Big Sister. One had to know that there were no such words of praise in this world that could captivate even the birds and beasts. Suddenly hearing such words from his mouth, the White Fox, who knew she was beautiful and was used to being praised by others, could not help but feel her heart flutter and her pretty face blushed. No matter how extraordinary a woman was, who wouldn't want to be the most beautiful woman in the world? Who wouldn't want the nicest words of praise to be used on them? Even immortals were no exception. The heart under her plump chest was beating a little erratically. Looking at this younger brother who always said frivolous words to her, she wanted to get angry but couldn't. She had finally experienced this scoundrel brother of hers. Every time he said words that could make a woman flustered, she really couldn't stand it. Although she knew he wasn't really frivolous, she still had to act angry, otherwise he would become arrogant. She then asked coldly, "Your words sound nice, but I'm afraid you have something to ask me for help with?" The sister really knew him too well. She immediately saw through his intentions. However, when he was free, he really didn't come to see her. Yu Qianzhou was a little embarrassed to open his mouth. His eyes wandered around, pretending not to hear anything as he admired the flowers around him. Yu Qianzhou stared blankly at the flower bed to his side, which had all sorts of flowers in full bloom. If he remembered correctly, the last time he came here he had clearly seen Guan Yu sowing the seeds. It hadn't even been a day since then, so why were the flowers already so red? How could they grow so fast? Could it be that he remembered wrongly? Xianxia thought that his memory was pretty good, but he didn't have a photographic memory. But this kind of thing shouldn't be wrong. He looked around the flower bed and then looked at where he was standing. It shouldn't be wrong. When were these flowers planted? Xianxia pointed at the flower bed beside him and asked suspiciously. The white fox didn't answer his question. Instead, it turned its head to the side proudly and also pretended to admire the flowers. This was something that he learned quickly from his younger brother. Xianxia looked at Guan Yu, who was smiling and looking at him. The latter waved at him and said, "Boss, do you want to know what's going on? Come here, I'll show you something good." Guan Yu's words clearly showed that he knew what was going on, and he didn't remember wrongly. There was indeed something wrong with this flower bed. Xianxia nodded and walked over obediently. He asked curiously, "What good thing do you want to see?" Guan Yu smiled and didn't answer. He took out a small bag from the storage bag on his waist and grabbed something from it. He put it in his palm and stretched it over. Xianxia stretched his head out and stared blankly at the two black dots on Guan Yu's palm for a long time. He then asked uncertainly, "Are they flower seeds?" "Smart. Boss is the boss, you can even see through it." Guan Yu looked at the two black dots on his palm and said, "That's right, they are two flower seeds. F***, you dare to trick me." Xianxia was angry. He rolled up his sleeves and was about to make a move. This Guan Yu was getting more and more impudent. He had schemed against him several times, and seeing that he didn't care about it, he was getting more and more excited. The white fox on the side couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. She seemed to be very happy to see her brother make a fool of himself. Xianxia was stunned. He turned his head and couldn't help but be stunned. This was the first time he saw the white fox smile like this. Under her smile, all the flowers around her paled in comparison. He finally understood why the ancients in his previous life would describe beauties as being able to outshine the moon and put the flowers to shame. No matter how beautiful the flowers were, how could they be more beautiful than the beauty in front of him? Guan Yu and Qinfeng were also stunned. They had never seen the white fox like this. The white fox clearly realized that she had lost her composure. Her pretty face instantly darkened, and she glared at the three of them coldly. The three of them shuddered at the same time and woke up. "Hey, big sister. You really are a seductress who can charm people to death." Xianxia groaned helplessly in his heart. He looked at Guan Yu and said, "Forget it. Since you were able to make my big sister smile, I won't argue with you today." "Why are you arguing? I said I would show you something good. Do you think I would lie to you?" Guan Yu said tit for tat. He then held the seeds in his hand and said, "Look carefully." After saying that, he squatted down and dug out two small holes in the soft soil that had been loosened. He picked up the two seeds in his hand and put them in the two holes. Xianxia, who was considered a farmer in his previous life, was naturally no stranger to farming. Although he had never grown flowers, he had grown vegetables before. He stared at Guan Yu's actions with his eyes wide open. He wanted to know the difference between growing flowers and vegetables. If there was no difference, how could the flowers grow so fast? After putting the seeds, Guan Yu reached out and untied a small bamboo tube from his waist. He gently pulled out the wooden stopper and took out a small wooden spoon from his belt. He reached into the bamboo tube and slowly scooped out a spoonful of something. The thing that he scooped out was purple. Xianxia thought it was familiar. He seemed to have seen it somewhere before. Chapter 52. Pouring a spoonful of the purple substance into the small pit where the seed was placed, Guan Yu quickly moved the soft soil around the small pit into the pit. Shortly after, he scooped out some water from the bucket beside him and poured it over the soil. Xianxia watched as he completed a series of actions, then stared at the small pit. Not long after, a crack appeared on the surface of the soil where the water had seeped into, followed by a few more. Suddenly, the center of the intersecting cracks arched slightly and broke open, revealing a conspicuous whitish-green dot. If one did not pay attention, they might not notice it. Soon, the green bean dot swayed slightly and gradually stretched out, revealing the figure of a small green sprout. Yu Qianchou sucked in a breath of cold air, his eyes wide and tongue-tied. Is that the seed germinating? How is this possible? He then looked at Guan Yu and cried out in surprise, "How did you do it?" Guan Yu smiled and gestured at Lu Ye with his lips, indicating for him to continue watching. The small green sprout burst forth with vitality, its branches and leaves curled up and wriggled in all directions, expanding and growing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The tender leaves continued to multiply, branching out in all directions. The main trunk stopped growing when it reached a person's thigh, gradually turning from translucent green to brownish red. The entire plant seemed to have solidified, stopping there without any movement. If not for the shocking growth process, no one would be able to tell the difference between this plant and other plants. Was that it? Yu Qianchou retracted his thoughts and let out a breath. Suddenly the plant moved again, its branches and leaves swaying, attracting his attention again. The plant's silence seemed to be brewing something. Its branches were trembling and the joints of the leaves and stems had bulges the size of beans. This was the case in many other places. When it reached the size of a broad bean, flower buds could be clearly seen. Then, as if something was trying to break free from its restraints, the flower buds struggled to break free. Bright colors began to bloom, expand, take shape and solidify. Fresh flowers appeared in front of them, their petals bright and fresh, their stamens pitiful. After a long time when there was no movement, the people standing at the side could smell a faint fragrance. Just like that, a plant with dozens of flowers blooming on its branches stood in front of him. From sowing, irrigating, germinating, growing, branching, budding and blooming, it was only the time it took to brew a cup of tea. It was really incredible. Yu Qianchou, who had been holding his breath for a long time, slowly turned his head and looked at the bamboo tube in Guan Yu's hand. Apart from the purple substance, he did not notice anything unusual during the planting process. It was obvious that the substance in the bamboo tube was the key. Guan Yu smiled and shook the bamboo tube in his hand, saying, "Let me show you again." After saying that, he squatted down and repeated the planting process in another small pit with seeds. However, when he placed the purple substance, he added half a spoonful more. Soon, the seed grew into a plant with flowers swaying on its branches. Yu Qianchou, who had been silently observing its growth, did not notice anything unusual about it. Looking at the two flowers standing side by side, just as he was feeling suspicious, an abnormality suddenly occurred. The flower that was planted later had its petals changed. The dazzling bright color was dimming. To be exact, it looked like it was slowly aging. The flower began to wither, its petals falling off one by one, then the stamens dying, followed by the flower stem falling off. Following that, the branches and leaves withered and turned yellow, and the leaves fell back to their roots. In the end, only a withered branch was left on the ground, and it was hard to tell that it was the same kind of flower that was in full bloom beside it. "How is it?" Guan Yu shook the bamboo tube again and said with a smile, "What I showed you is not bad, right?" Yu Qianchou nodded and said, "It is indeed a good thing. It can actually condense the growth process of a flower in the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. It is indeed amazing, but..." He suddenly pointed at the purple substance in the distance and asked, "What I want to know the most now is, what method did you use to store the purple chaos in this small bamboo tube?" Just as the flowers bloomed and withered, he suddenly felt something and guessed what was in Guan Yu's hand. "Ha, I knew I couldn't hide it from you." He originally wanted to tease Yu Qianchou, but he didn't expect to be seen through so quickly. Guan Yu raised the thing in his hand and sighed, "Although I don't know what this is, you know this place better than I do. You said that this is the purple chaos, so it should be the purple chaos. It was purely an accident that I found out about its use." He looked at the purple chaos in the distance and said, "When I first saw this thing, I was very curious about what was behind the purple. After a lot of effort, I realized that although this thing is soft, I can't push it away, cut it, pierce it, or tear it. It is really amazing, let alone store it. I thought you might have a way. After all, you know this place better, but now it seems that you don't know." Yu Qianchou nodded and said, "Then how did you do it?" "Ah, what a coincidence. A few days ago I was hungry, so I took a stick to catch a rabbit. No one would have thought that the purple chaos that couldn't even be broken by iron and stone could actually be cut by the stick in my hand." After trying a few more times, I finally realized that this purple chaos was not afraid of anything, only things with the wood attribute could restrain it. I made a wooden spoon and dug out a few pieces to store it, but I realized that using anything else to store it would be useless. Once I put it in, it would slowly disappear. In the end, I remembered that bamboo is also something with the wood attribute, so I got a piece and tried it. Ah, it really worked. Guan Yu laughed proudly. So that's how it is. Yu Qianzhou suddenly understood. He then pointed at the bamboo tube in his hand and pointed at the blooming flowers and asked, "How did you know that it has such a magical effect? Did you also discover it by accident?" Guan Yu secretly glanced at the white fox and smiled sheepishly. "Haven't I been planting flowers every day? That day when I was bored, I got excited and wanted to see what the purple chaos would do as fertilizer, so I poured a tube of it. In the end I was shocked. Only then did I realize that the purple chaos had such a magical effect. After trying it a few more times, I found out that the amount of it can control the growth rate of the flowers. Tiskte, I didn't expect that there would be such a treasure in my territory. How unexpected." Yu Qianzhou sighed and said, "It must be useful for other plants too, right? Yunchang, have you tried other things?" The white fox at the side looked at Guan Yu. It seemed to be the first time it heard Guan Yu and Yunchang being addressed as such. Guan Yu nodded and said, "I've tried a few. They should be able to accelerate the growth of plants. However, I found something strange. The flowers and plants that we plant don't seem to bear fruit or produce seeds. Logically speaking, it's impossible. It's still understandable if there are a few. How can everything just bloom and not bear fruit? It's the same for the ones that grow with the purple chaos. You saw it just now. Is it related to this place? Boss, didn't you always say that this is your territory? Please explain it to me." Yu Qianzhou was also thinking about why. He didn't hear the meaning in Guan Yu's words that made things difficult for him. His gaze swept across the flower bed that was in full bloom. He seemed to feel that something was missing. After a while, his furrowed brows suddenly relaxed. Yu Qianzhou pointed at the withered branch that had experienced the ups and downs and said, "Yunchang, do it the way it did just now." You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.